pass a paper punch?
What I had on the table today was, on the expenditure side for Public Works, there was a typo in there, which was, instead of 1,000, should have been 12,000, and I highlighted in orange. So it'd be on the Public Works, the top would say street maintenance. So that was one of the things I handed out. So the expenditures are up by 11,000 from what I had originally sent you. On the revenue side, we're going to increase the building inspector permit proposal from 225 to 250. So that's marked in orange on the sheet I handed out today. And there was also a slight adjustment. I went in and did a preliminary calculation on the fire based on what we knew, with the new valuations and all that. The net result is on the levy calculation, the updated one, the mill rate's now at, the increase as of right now, before you start doing whatever you're going to do, is the increase is 0.19 instead of 0.20. So the net impact about $14,000. So as you go through and if you make any changes, I can immediately tell you what impact that has on the mill rate, because I've got the spreadsheet here. So how do you guys want to proceed? Do you want to just go do the departments you have questions on? Do it that way. And I know Kathy's here to talk about the fees for the attorneys. So I don't know, Rich, what order do you want to do things in?
Well, let's just go through the tabs.
Okay, that's fine.
Right?
Should we address the levy cap or the mill rate cap that we have self-imposed?
Yeah, Brenda's got some numbers on that if you want. Sure.
Because we're obviously over it already for this
Correct.
year.
So, yeah.
Yep, we've got two things going. One you addressed, Randy, is we are over our mill rate our mill rate that's addressed in our debt management policy, and that's at 5.25. Right now we have capital projects that we are doing the debt projections for, issuing debt in 2019 for the 2019 and 2020 projects, and as soon as we get that back, I thought I'd bring that debt management policy back to finance because then we'll have a better idea of what that debt mill rate,
including the fire station?
Including the fire station, absolutely, yep. But then the other thing that we have to watch for is our levy limit at the state. And so I do have a calculation that we didn't include in the books because it just takes a little bit of explanation. And the far left column is the 2018 levy for 2019 taxes. And right now, our net new construction percent that's set by the state is 1.907%. So the amount that we could increase our levy in 2019 was $128,960, and that's it. We are increasing our levy a little bit more than that, and we're able to do that because of our debt right now. And so unused levy capacity, that line number, the 192,330, does everybody see where that number is? That last year was 611,573, and so if we would approve all the requests that are in our budget, our unused levy capacity would go down to 192,330 for next year. So
I see.
And we're at what right now, 419?
right now we're at
611.
611,573. So we're using, right now if we proved everything, we're using 419,243 of that levy capacity. In our non-tax revenue this year, there's a state aid payment from the state of $79,860. Because they're giving us that aid payment, we have to subtract that off of our levy limit. And so we're doing that on that calculation. So the high of that levy capacity was 834,000 in 15.
Not debt levy. Excess.
Unused levy capacity, yep.
Right.
Yep. And then the bottom three lines, I just had the percentage of the debt levy increase per year, and then the operating levy, and then the total levy increase percentages, if that's helpful to anybody.
Is that 547 actual levy mill rate has nothing to do with our, the fire station right now?
It does not. We are, like I said, we're running those numbers right now, and we'll see how we can put that fire station in, because the council and finance committee will want to see how those numbers work. We've talked preliminary that's going to be 20 cents, but we can see how we can structure it.
So it wouldn't be out of the realm if we approved everything plus the fire station, we'd be at a 560.
The fire station's debt, so that doesn't count against your levy.
Oh,
Or
Because it's
not
capital?
against your levy, not your,
It doesn't affect the levy limit, but it does affect the mill rate.
I guess I'm talking about the mill rate.
Yep, you're right.
So it'd be 560-ish.
if
Potentially.
If we were on here this year. But if we issue debt in 2019, the first payment probably wouldn't be till 2020.
Good
correct?
point.
Realization of it?
Yep.
Okay.
So the fire station would not impact the 2019 budget, even if we built the entire thing, because the first payment probably wouldn't be until
2020.
2020.
But it's something to be aware of.
And then you'll also have your 2019, 2020 capital projects
Yeah.
on top of that.
So
Streets and,
I want to probably back up a little bit. I want to make sure I understand this. So in last year, I'm on our levy-based assessed value. The levy limit was 565. That was as high as
Correct.
we could go.
That was.
And that number went down.
It did.
And why is that?
It is because of that personal property aid. Because we're getting
That's
it in.
79,000, is that
Yeah,
what you're
because
referencing?
the state's going to be mailing us a check for that, and so that levy limit number went down.
Personal property aid. Who benefits from that?
so essentially, I think what they did is the way they assess the personal property, which is your machine, the
Right.
stuff you have in your office or your business, they're being charged less for that. The way they calculate those numbers, they being the assessors. So the businesses, I believe, will be paying less on personal property tax. And in order to lessen the blow on the municipalities, they set up this aid formula. It's similar to how many years ago has been computer aid.
Correct.
They eliminated certain things for computers. So we get a check every year for $27,000 or something because so many years ago they took certain computer things out of the personal property. So they're giving us this check for $79,000. However, they're then adjusting the
I get that.
levy limit by that.
I didn't know that we participated in the personal property tax. I didn't realize that we benefited from that.
That's been
No.
forever. I mean, all property owners that have equipment, computers and.
So that's just to offset our loss and
Right.
share of the loss.
Correct.
Okay.
But the downside of it is that also then they, on top of that, took it off our levy limit.
All right. So now,
So they kind of
yeah,
repenalized us.
that really, so it reduced our overall levy capacity, huh? Levy limit.
That's our understanding of it, and so we can certainly, talk to DOR more, talk to the league more, see if there's anything that we can do for next year.
The 5.58 levy limit mill rate, does that include the unused levy capacity as well, or is that without? the
That
unused-
would be if we used up all our levy
That's
capacity.
our cushion.
Okay,
That's the max we could
so
go.
that's the max we
the
could
max.
use.
And we'd have nothing left.
And then, okay, so then if we used it all, that would reduce our levy limit mill rate for next year, correct?
If the state said your levy limit, well, this year it's what, $128,000. That's what our regular levy limit's $128,000. Next year, if we use all
Okay.
of all of our excess levy capacity, all you could increase the levy by next year would be $129,000.
Okay,
I mean, we don't know what those numbers
yeah,
will be. but-
right,
Yep.
okay. I just want to make sure I understand these numbers.
So if you were to use it all up this year, add several more things to the budget and use that, go all the way up to 558,
That's not much.
there would be nothing. Next
So-
year, you would be limited to that
A
129,000.
year ago, we had an approximately $800,000 cushion, and we're down to 120,
If this budget,
192.
192.
if
With
this
this
budget
budget.
goes through,
Got it, I got it. So if we were to, an extreme, if we were to go to our max levy capacity this year, and the state were somehow to come in with another part of this formula for personal property tax and lower our levy capacity next year, putting us in a situation where we would be levying more than what the state would allow, what do? We have to reduce our budget then?
you have to go to referendum.
Everybody follow
Or
that?
reduce your budget.
Right, yeah.
Yep. Or tap
But
into
how-
the.
can we get a handle on that?
undesignated or
If that would happen?
Can we get, well, there's.
Get a handle on that? You know what I mean? Like,
What can we do?
is it probable that that would happen next year? You know what I mean? I get the possibility of it, but is there a way that we can find out the probability of that happening?
Of that going down again.
Right.
Even if let's just say, even if we don't go to levy capacity this year, could they reduce it enough that would put us at our capacity or
Or
beyond?
can we reject it?
I don't know that we can reject it. We can,
To answer if,
We probably could though, couldn't we? To be
I
able
don't know
to.
if we have that option to reject it. I don't know that, we could reject it, but I don't think that would change what they'd give us for levy limit.
Why would we want to reject the money?
So that we would get the excess capacity. If
But
it's not, if it's not a dollar for dollar return,
Right.
I don't think the state would allow you, they're still gonna use this formula and say, fine, don't take the money, but this is still
But
gonna.
this is still your levy limit, right?
and it really was a dollar for dollar.
Oh, was it?
This year.
okay.
But if, next year, if we still get the same $8, the 79,860, then it's really not anymore, if they don't do an inflation increase going forward.
Yeah.
But once, you're correct, Joyce, once we,
If-
so we were at our levy capacity and we only had 128,000 this year, and you wanted to spend 228,000, then we'd have to take 100,000 out of undesignated. But then, as you continue to do that, then that
Right,
impacts
yeah.
your,
Our credit
your credit rating and
abilities,
stuff.
yeah.
Or, or you could issue more debt, because that's outside. And what we do here, which is a good practice, is we issue debt for just certain things, capital items, what it's intended.
Right. Not operational.
Correct.
Which would be disastrous.
Exactly.
All right, so I know that we're not at this point with this budget, but obviously we need to be thinking down the road. Do we have a schedule of bonding that we're gonna be doing? A timeline?
Yes.
So we've got, pretty soon we're gonna be doing the infrastructure out at the dog track.
Correct. We sent some numbers over late last week, and so I think that we will have numbers, tomorrow or Thursday to share with Finance and Council regarding bonding in 2019, which includes the fire station, and so what the effects of that would be. We do have some debt falling off next year, and so hopefully we can structure some of that debt in there. But we'll have a better understanding hopefully later this week.
So, and everybody knows that we've got a lot coming up. We've got a lot. We're gonna have to, at some point when the DOT puts a date on that interchange, that's a big bill for us. I presume the 11th Street Bridge
Yep.
expansion or widening is gonna be a huge hit, and,
Yeah.
all that's coming up in what, the next, arguably, depending upon that interchange, within the next 5-6 years.
And Second
Starting next year.
Our share of Second Street,
Yep.
which is essentially from the parking, edge of the parking spots to the curb. Now, some of that will be assessed, but why don't we, if you want, we can run through revenue.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody had any questions on that. Not a lot of changes. The building inspection,
So that changed with,
I put that up to 250 from 225.
yeah,
Right. Because I talked to Mike and he was comfortable with that. We're trying to base it historically. You know, kind of the wild card and all that is how quickly we would have anything go into St. Croix Business Park. Because even though that's, or not St. Croix Business, St. Croix Meadows. Even though that's in the tax increment district, we would still get the building permit fees. So it depends on, you know, but David and Mike were comfortable with 250. So there was a reduction there. That, you see that increase in intergovernmental revenue, that's this property tax, or personal property tax
Sure.
thing. That's where that'll show up in the budget as coming in as revenue.
Why is that a different number?
Well, there's other things that go into that if you look on the pages behind,
Got it. Okay.
but that's just one of the,
Understood.
we did get an increase in state transportation aid.
we got an increase in state transportation of 18 and we got a reduction in shared revenue of 16. So we ended up getting about 2,000 more from the state, or well, next year. Payment of lieu of taxes, that's up on the taxes non-property. We already notified you, that went up 50, that'll be going up 50, about 50,000 next year. Most of the rest of them are pretty steady. There's not a lot. We did increase the interest, which is under miscellaneous revenue, by about $25,000 because interest rates are going up. So it's still pretty conservative, but. So there's not a lot of, for non-tax revenue, there's, you know, weren't a lot of increases.
What are we allowed to use the state transportation aid for?
It just goes in. What they do is we have to, when we send in our state report every week, show how much has been spent on streets, and then it's a formula, and they sent it back. So
Okay.
it isn't a thing where they come in and say, "Did you spend $791,000 on streets?" But
We spend a lot more than that.
well, we do. I know. But so that's so it isn't
okay.
like it's not an auditable thing like a grant
Okay.
where they'd come in and say we have to show them dollar for dollar. But
Okay.
And again, the decrease in liquor and malt beverage license, that's from 2016 to 2017.
Well, we had a
This
couple
year.
of.
This is the lack of
16,
the-
It has to do with if you have any reserve licenses coming due, you know, because even so, if someone takes, if you have a reserve license and you issue it to another person for that same business, we get to charge you $10,000 again. So it just depends on what happens with, and we had a couple new licenses, I believe, in 16.
Gotcha.
So
But it's also the lack of license available.
availability, right?
Yeah,
So the 30,000 is what we get in under the assumption that we don't issue any new licenses.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it.
Based on population, we will probably have a new, if we go over 14,000, we will have another license available in the fall of 2019, but you probably maybe wouldn't see that till 2020, just on the publication and
Right.
assuming someone applies for it, which I'm guessing someone will.
Park charges exempt on 4 or 5, went from 33 to 15,000.
I just based on that on historical,
Historical what?
the history on it. You're talking park charges.
Tax exempt, page 4 or 5.
If you look at what we've had this year, for whatever reason, it's down quite a bit. Or why it went from 3,300 to 15,000. So that was just based on, this year is down, but based historically, we've had 11, 12, 13,000 every year. So there's an increase in that. You're talking the tax exempt, the first line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the number on the far right is the next year's.
You're anticipating an increase because of,
Historical. When we do a lot of these figures, we look back and see what's happened over
Yeah.
the last 3, 4, 5 years. You'll have spike years, you'll have down years, but that's what we're basing it on, is a 3, 4, 5 year average. I mean, that can be reduced if,
yeah.
This with the boat launch passes. Why is that number the same for 17 and 18?
Just where it was as of 9:30. I can check on those.
I mean, that just seems, and same thing with the non-resident pass. Is that?
That may be a typo or transposition over.
All right.
Questions on that, or?
We getting $5,000 more from the city or from the school for the police officer, or what?
That's based on the fact that their wages will be going up. So we basically, they pay 75% of their wages and benefits. So we increase that a little bit because their wages will be going up next year. Well, potentially.
At some point, were we looking at increases to boat launch passes?
We increased them a couple years ago, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
We
We
can,
can't charge more than the
DNR,
DNR. There's a limit on what we can
state
charge.
park rates.
Yeah.
Got it.
we have been discussing a boat launch pay station. Right now, we have a hard time getting somebody to work that, and so it's our thought that if we had an actual pay station that made it more convenient for people to pay, that they would. And so we are looking at that.
That must be what I remember.
Because if we don't have a staff person there, it's essentially the honor system. Correct, Mike? Yeah.
Mike, any idea how many days, what percent of the season that launch was closed this year?
I mean, we were closed for 6 weeks during the summer months, and we just recently had to close it here, over the last couple of days. So you're probably talking 30, 45, upwards of 50 days out of the season that we were shut down.
Yeah,
So
I'm thinking all of that when we were at no wake for a month and a half probably,
right.
and then there were days which is 83 feet. You pull them at what, 80, 81?
Yeah, it's like 81 somewhere near that.
We lost a lot of revenue there. I'm shocked at the revenue that we got.
Yeah.
In fact, that it was close to the previous years.
Right. I just think people you made up for, people weren't able to get out, so when it was open, you got tons of people there.
Yeah.
Anything else? What I will go back and do, though, and I'll have Brenda look through too, is we'll do another year to date just to make sure that our projections are on, and just to make sure that we're getting everything we can out of the revenue. On the expenditures, I'll just go through the tabs in order. Assessment, the increase there was, as I mentioned, there's just a little bit of a shift in the the assessment personnel is gone now because we no longer, Liz had worked part-time this year, a few hours a week helping with the assessment records. She is now going to be working for Bomar, so she'll no longer be our employee, so that's why that's gone. And then the professional services is the contract that we set for the 3 years with Bomar to include their regular assessment work plus the reassessment. And so they spread that over 3 years. So that's why, there's a big increase there.
109 is spread over 3?
The 102 be for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right. So we could have paid 50 and then 160 on the year that we actually do the reval, but they just took the actual cost and spread it out over 3 years to make the budget smoother. Any questions on that?
Yeah, the library contribution, the 2019 proposed is 347,310, which is the same as 2018.
Are you on the totals page?
Jumping,
I'm on the proposed expenditures.
jumping ahead.
So what?
What page are you on? I thought,
So I was going through each of the individual departments first.
oh, okay.
So is that okay? And then we'll come back, we can come
Okay.
back to that? That's okay.
All right, I gotta
Yep.
find where you're at.
Sorry. Yep, so I just did the assessment tab.
Oh, the assessment, okay.
Yep. Building inspection. A slight increase in the personnel because the receptionist upstairs in the past had done work. We were charging a little bit of her wages to water and sewer because they were still upstairs, so they're not there anymore. So she's not, she did a little bit of reception work and phone call answering and stuff. So, but that's why there's a slight change in the building inspection personnel. Otherwise, David, the rest of his budget's exactly the same as it was last year for building inspection. IT for personnel, as we discussed at the last meeting, the increase in personnel is the shift in the amount of Brian and Kim's salary that's had previously been sent over to the utility funds.
Why the black mark, why no 2019 proposed? Because they're set? On pay,
Did you get a sheet with,
information
Go to the
technology.
next page.
go to the next. Did you get one with the blackout, Randy?
Yeah,
Oh, I apologize, that was an old, here.
so that's not supposed to be in there?
No. I must have pulled the old, is that the only page in there for technology then?
No, there's
No,
another
there's
one.
another page.
Yeah, get rid of the black page, I'm sorry, that was the, when we give it to the department heads, we don't have personnel costs in there because they don't deal with that. So if you go to the page that doesn't have the big black mark on it, you'll see the increase in personnel. And Brian has an explanation in his packet about the change with the maintenance agreement and leases. He's
Is that
proposing,
The 50 grand one?
which, and he asked about it last year too, as an upgrade to the website, because they're no longer going to be servicing it after this year if we maintain with the platform that we're on. Because it's 6 years old now, we haven't upgraded to the new platform.
So the website's going into maintenance agreements and leases?
Yes, because we pay so much a month for,
What portion of the 50 is the website?
8125, 8,125.
1,125, okay.
and it looks like it's a one-time cost from what it says in Brian's narrative.
And that's a platform that we're paying for?
We basically,
or-
it's in the cloud. So
Sure.
they maintain it, they whatever, we change it, we do all the changes to it, but
Got it.
we
So
pay.
it's for the service of
service,
having it?
yeah, right.
Having the website, okay.
Yep.
And that's what he proposed last year that we
We proposed,
cut,
right, and then,
correct?
right, it was decided to just.
Now we have to cut it because the contract is over, or?
We don't
We
cut
have-
it.
Last
have
year, we
to-
cut it just for, to cut some, I'm not just to cut something, but as part of,
Yeah,
keep the millers.
But now it's not.
but now we
backed up.
have to.
Well, if
is-
they aren't going to provide upgrades and whatever after the first of 19.
Went down from 11 to 8, so we saved some money there.
And
But
because they're not going to maintain it anymore, there's a security risk.
Yes, right. So it is a need.
Yep. Mayor and council, I don't believe there's any changes to that. Memberships and subscriptions, that is, this year we paid the $67.08 was to the, is that the next one, Mayor and council? Yes.
Administrator.
Oh, I'm sorry. I maybe didn't even have a Todd for the mayor and council. Maybe it's with the administrator because there was really no changes to it.
well, that might not be a lot, but membership can be cut at some.
Well, that's our League of Wisconsin Municipalities dues.
So, I'm just saying. And that's
I
in
don't know
every
that you-
department.
Well, you know what else was in there this year, however, was the League of Cities.
Right.
That's why it was up from last year. That's the difference.
That's the difference, okay.
So the 5,300 is the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. The 1,500 approximately was for the League of Cities. So yes, that is something you can discuss. City administrator, again, it's the same thing. It's not, has nothing to do with what I'm being paid. It has to do with the percentage that's being allotted to the general fund versus the utilities. First Street, is that next?
No, clerk, treasurer.
Okay. Clerk treasurer. Personnel, again, that's that shift we talked about. So it's basically IT, the city administrator, and clerk treasurer, the three accounts that got hit with that change. Otherwise, the rest of the budget is within $2,000 of it was last year. Brenda and Jen's narrative is behind. If you have a chance to look at it, if you have any questions, they're both here.
That's with that part-time,
Correct.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's very nice.
That's already in here, right?
Yeah.
The part-time person, yes.
And it's my same thing I say every year, travel and conferences and training and memberships are all part of things that could be cut if necessary.
We understand.
Elections is next. Elections goes down, it's every other year. Next year will be the down year because we only have two elections, well, hopefully only have two elections. Should never say that because there is a one-time, you'll notice on the maintenance agreement that there's an increase from 4,000 to 2,500. At the end of the evening, after the machine does its magic, the results are modemed up to the county, and it's a 3G modem, and we have to upgrade to 4G. So it's a one-year thing, so that'll go back down after this year. But so that's why there's a one-year increase. So each of our ballot readers will have to have this upgrade. So then we can modem the results to the county at the end of the evening. It has a built-in modem right in the machine.
So it's like your phone.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Municipal court, I don't believe there were any changes there. Just a slight increase for the, the 2% wage increase. Otherwise, they shifted things around within their budget a little bit, but the numbers are exactly the same. Legal, is that correct? That's the next one? Mm-hmm. Yep. So Kathy McKittrick is here. She wanted to have a discussion with you about their fees. She had sent an email earlier today, but she also, I believe, brought copies of the memo if you didn't see it. So.
Okay. Did you get one, Joyce?
Did everybody get the
know
memo? Okay.
Yep. And this does not, you did not update this at all?
Correct.
To this
What's
letter.
in here does not
Before
reflect
this.
any changes here.
Okay.
We are going to be at between 95 and 100, do we figure, Brenda? Is that what we estimated for this year? Seems to me that was the number.
For this legal tab,
Thank you.
Right, that's what we're actually going to be at this year.
we were budgeted for 81.
We budgeted for 81, correct. And that includes both the city attorney and the prosecuting attorney for court. So this isn't all just the work that Catherine does, it also is.
What
also-
percentages are split between Catherine and prosecution?
How much is it between the two?
I think it's about 55-25, I want to say. 55,000, 25,000. So the 80 budgeted wise.
25 is prosecution?
Right. So this year, I think we're going to be at about 60-30, 60,000, 30,000. The prosecution just depends on what cases end up at
How
the
well
level.
behaved your residents are and people traveling through, actually. Okay, I sent you all a memo today, and you may or may not, I'm not sure if you had time to look at it. I'll give one to. Since the council has changed over the years, I don't know if you know my history. So I have served the city since 2000, and during that time we've increased our rates all of twice, once in '02 and once in '07. And so we have not changed our rates since 2007, and it currently is at $150 an hour. And obviously expenses have increased over that time period, and so we found it necessary to review our fee agreement. In doing so, we did kind of an informal survey of St. Croix County municipalities, including River Falls, New Richmond,
Roberts, Baldwin, the area municipalities, Somerset, Amory, Glenwood City. And I just tried to summarize that for you in the memo. The hourly rates we found, we just obtained fee agreements from the various municipalities, range from about $160 an hour to $200 an hour. And several of the law firms, especially for New Richmond, River Falls, Roberts, Somerset, have this two-tier rate in which they have a general municipal rate, which covers general municipal work, and then they identify various specialty type areas of law, including litigation, development-related legal work, real estate, employment, and actually the city has some of that right now with the Weld firm who does the labor and employment work for the city. They charge a different rate, obviously, than we do. Police and Fire Commission is usually billed separately at a higher rate, and various, I mean, they're starting to have kind of a laundry list, to be honest, of different types of services that are considered specialty. I have tried to keep mine on hours to a minimum that are truly a different type of work than general municipal. So what we're proposing, and again, we haven't raised our rates since '07, is we found most of the larger municipalities, or even Roberts is at 185, New Richmond, they do something a little bit different. They have a flat fee agreement, but it's loosely based on the 185 an hour rate. So we are asking or proposing that our rate be changed to $185 an hour for the general municipal. The specialty work would be limited to development type work, employee disciplinary matters, real estate, police and fire commission matters, and litigation. And that would be billed at $200 an hour. That is lower than most of any of the municipalities we saw who bill for the specialty areas. Most of those started at $225, and Baki Norman, for example, charges their regular hourly rate for anything other than general municipal. So they charge $185 for general, and then from $275 to $300, whatever their regular private rate is for those other areas of law. What we're proposing is just $200 an hour for those areas of law.
I like how you say just $200.
Well, when you compare it, I know, and I believe me, I mean, to be honest,
You don't
done
like
this only
asking for
3
money,
times
look at-
because it's relatively painful for us to do.
You're finally uncomfortable. Asking for money.
But our regular private rate, and it's been this for some time, is $295 an hour. So we're giving a significant discount to municipalities. And honestly, our new municipal clients were bringing in at $200 an hour, partially because we don't like increasing rates. So when we do it because we pretty much have to. It's been that long a time. So we're willing to work with the city. We understand, you have a budget process and so forth, but we do think it is time to bring our rates more consistent with what most municipalities are paying.
Respectfully, Catherine, those local attorneys that are representing those ones who've...
Yep, it's Baki Norman. They're from New Richmond, and Eckberg Lammers. I mean, they have a Minnesota office, but they also have a local office. Weld is Eau Claire. The others are, I think Weld does Village of Somerset. They're at $170 an hour. I think Weld also does, their firm does River Falls. They have this general municipal rate and then the specialty areas. So they are pretty much local. Some are Pierce County, but do municipalities in Wisconsin.
You say you-
Lindquist Nelson and Lindquist is another, they charge $200 an hour.
You say you charge mileage. Are you charging mileage from your office, or do you live in River Falls? Or
I
Hudson?
live in Kinnickinnick, which is, pretty close to 4 miles outside of River Falls.
That is
So,
not included in your rate. You charge extra for mileage.
yes, I do.
So ballpark figure, you know what we've paid you in mileage?
No, I
It
don't.
should be on there.
It's about, I think,
In legal, it's not.
14.
Yeah, it'd be travels and conferences. Catherine, usually the conferences she goes to are the free ones that the league offers and stuff. I mean,
They're not free, and I don't charge mileage to the city for going to a conference. I only charge mileage for going to and from
What-
the city.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
in that line is actually the mileage, the actual mileage charge on Catherine's bill. It wasn't for training. That,
No, we
252.
pay our own league conference fee. and-
So it might be a
and it's-
little bit mislabeled.
So we've only paid you $252 worth of mileage.
probably through the end of August, because.
Well, it's maybe $13, $14, $15 to round trip to come here, so it's not a lot. And I don't think I've traveled other than between River Falls and Hudson.
Is there a chance I could ask a question?
Sure.
Have you asked for an increase in the past and been denied?
No.
So this is the first time you're.
Well, we've asked, we increased, I believe we started at 110. We increased to, yeah, we have not, no, we have not. No, what happened was 2008, and I just didn't feel like we could raise our rates. And the next year, I didn't feel like, and we got here. I mean, we just haven't even, reviewed our fee agreement. And so we just felt it was time, and we need to bring it up, at least inform you of the situation.
So for today's discussion, I mean, if we would have to adjust that number if you were inclined to go with their proposal. That would be a separate action that we would
Yes,
approve that
I
at a
mean-
separate meeting, but for budget purposes, that's why Kathy brought it forward now, so that
Yeah, so
it
that you
wasn't
could
coming forward in
consider it.
December after we had already.
Exactly.
I know Randy asked this already, what percentage is Catherine within the 81,000?
I want to say dollar amount, 55,000, 50 to 55 is what Catherine does, and then 25 to 30,000 is
So if it was this year with
60,
the
40,
increase-
65, 35, something like that.
So if it was this year with that increase, which is about 19% increase,
You know, I would say, based on what we're looking at this year, we're looking at about 100.
120, didn't you say, or 125?
But this year's been kind of an unusual, we've had a lot
The
of.
last couple of years with all the
Stop calling her with
MS
your
issues
billable
and so
hours.
forth. I will say, just so you know, that we are planning on hiring a new attorney, and we will still charge the $150 an hour rate for an attorney with 0 to 4 years, new attorney who will do the prosecuting. And he's been actually here quite often with Dan Murray, who is the prosecutor, and going with him and attending hearings, and
So you
so,
could potentially
so that might not
see
change.
some savings on the prosecution side because that attorney would be billed at a lower rate.
Yeah, at the 150.
So Catherine, if we sent this out for RFP, we would get somewhere in what you had quoted in your letter?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I tried to do the work for you, frankly, and it's just, yeah, it would be between 160 and 200 is my, that was the range we found in the municipalities we looked at, and then some do this flat fee, but it's based on what they want to achieve as an hourly rate, and it excludes the various services. And all those services are different. We tried to narrow ours down to some of the reasons these are different is for like police and fire, litigation, development agreements. You pretty much have to, depending on the situation, drop what you're doing. I mean, developers have time, deadlines and dates they want to get things done, and same with litigation and police and fire commission.
So you're pretty confident that we would get an RFP within more of what you're offering with your firm? Service.
Yes, at least, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's some firms that are still at the 160. But I think the way they balance it out, and I'm just trying to give you full disclosure, what I learned in doing this process is they have the laundry list of specialty areas where those are usually 225 and higher.
Different billable hour categories.
Yeah, where they are charging a more closer, well, Baki Norman is charging their private rate, which they say on their fee agreements is between $275 and $300 an hour for any specialty area that they define as not general municipal. So we've tried to balance it out, offer you something that's lower on the specialty areas. They don't happen all that often, but when they do, I mean, there's a lot of development now. Development is reimbursed by the developer, but the other ones are, you know, like police and fire. Those are really kind of unique areas of the municipal world, and I'm experienced in those. And
the developer would not show up in this area?
Correct, right.
Because those are billed directly back to. So to kind of, if you were asking Bill what I thought that number should be, is that where, I mean, I would say it, I mean, we don't know what, the difficulty is we don't know what is going to happen next year, but I would say at least 100 if you're comfortable with the fee structure. You know, and you're probably talking 70 to 75, or 65 to 70 of that would be for Kathy's work, and then the balance would be for court.
Okay. It's almost 20,000. But of course it varies, right?
Right. I mean, you can even see, I mean, and I went back and did historically, we had years 2009, 10, 11 where it was 130,000, 110,000, and the budget actually has gone down there.
yeah,
It was 116,500 like 2009, 2010, 2011, and then 12 it went down to I think 101. It was there for a couple of years, and the one is always for the travel, and then it's been at 81. So the city has actually been reducing the budget for this category over the years, and I think the 2012 reduction was because of that was a tough budget year. And I know we try, and it doesn't always work, but we try to limit who calls her. Mm-hmm. So we don't, as a general rule, if someone calls and says, I want to talk to the city attorney, we don't just give them the number. We try to find out what's going on. If we can, you know, we'll say, well, what's the issue? You know, and maybe it isn't even something that she can deal with, but again, to try to reduce who's calling her, because if they call her, she still has to respond and get charged for it.
Frankly, you have a highly trained staff, and so, I mean, I represent a lot of different municipalities, and with your staff, you've got the wherewithal within the city staff to answer a lot of questions, so they don't have to come to me, which is different from smaller municipalities where they don't
when
really
we can,
have that
we'll call the
background.
League of Wisconsin Municipalities if there's a question that we think they can answer for us. If it's a municipal thing, before we'll call Catherine, or you know, or we'll call the State Department of Revenue for a liquor license question. Before, you know, we try to do what we can too to make sure that we're not just automatically picking up the phone. And
Any other questions, or?
did you want me to drop 100 in there for now and then see what happens? Okay. And then Catherine then will send along for council action.
Yeah,
sitting
an
there.
agreement.
Right.
Yeah, if you tell me what,
Right.
I mean, I'm making a proposal. If you tell me what you settle on, I'll put it in the agreement, and we'll put it on the council for council approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Next up is labor relations. The reason the labor attorney's up next year by 2,000 is we'll be negotiating with patrol and sergeant's units. So there may be increased cost depending on how that goes. Sometimes we're fortunate and it goes pretty well and we're able to resolve it. The last contract, we ended up having to go to mediation, and Steve's rate is quite a bit higher than, or their firm's rate is quite a bit. I think they're at about $300 an hour. So we also try to limit when we call him too. There have been occasions where we've called Kathy first to see if it's something she knows enough about before we call Steve, just because she's less expensive.
Yeah, I do some employment
Yeah.
law in my private practice.
The weights and measures, do you all know what that is? I mean, that's the annual fee we get charged by the state, and then they come in and inspect all the scales and all the things throughout the city. That's been the same for several years now, so that we have to pay. Municipal insurances,
Auto went up.
auto's going up, and that's just because we get newer vehicles or more vehicles. Our workers' comp, we met with, Jenny and I met with them yesterday. Our workers' comp mod, you want to be, 1 is normal, that's where you'd like to be. We're going to be at 0.76 this year, which is very good. Below 1 is good. And so I think we were at 0.83, 0.84 last year. I'm thinking I may, before all is said and done, that number maybe will go down. What I'm going to do, once we know what you decide to do, if you make any, I know you already talked about personnel last time, but if you were to go back and make any changes, I'll get the number to our agent, and that number is set by the state of Wisconsin. So if I send him the numbers of what our payroll is going to be next year, he can turn right around and tell me exactly what that number is. So I'm thinking workers' comp, we may be actually to lower that a little bit. So, and the COBRA for the health insurance for the retirees, because we have a couple more retirees next year, so that's why there's a slight increase of that. If we have a retiree from the wastewater division, we charge that to wastewater. If we have a retiree from water, we charge it from, this would just be for more of the general fund employees. And just as explanation, and I think you're all aware of this, but when an employee files for retirement with Wisconsin Retirement, so it isn't where someone just comes and says, I'm retiring, and then, they don't actually file for Wisconsin Retirement. We provide them up to, for their sick leave, whatever they have in their sick leave bank, up to 600 hours times their ending hourly rate. And we put that in a fund, if you will, and then that we will pay their health insurance premiums, whether it's Medicare or whatever, until that money's exhausted. And we've been doing that. It's a benefit that's been in there for years. I know Rich and I have had a conversation about whether we want to look to the future, for future employees, if we want to do something different, go from a vacation and sick leave system to a PTO system, and then potentially this would be eliminated. But that's what that money is in there for. Sometimes you have employees when they retire that don't have a lot of sick leave left because either they've used it over the years, or sometimes you'll have a situation where an employee is retiring somewhat because of an illness. But that's what that's been built into our benefit structure for a while. But I am going to look at some different options for, like I said, a PTO thing, and then this would potentially then go away for future employees that are hired going forward. So, all right. Municipal ambulance. Get this to open back up here. I kept it at 17. The adjustment, the reason it's up a little bit is just because of the population increase. I mean, that's the latest we've heard from, the meetings and stuff, is that the goal is to keep it at 17 for next year. Fire department is next, I believe. Scott has his explanation here. Scott is here. Did you want to mention the one thing you mentioned to me earlier, Scott?
Sure, real quick. Honorable Mayor, Finance Committee members, happy Bosses Day to all my bosses. If everyone knows it's Bosses Day today. Wow. In case Devin didn't get you in.
Yeah, that's right.
No, so just a couple minor things. Really, too, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory of how the fire department is funded. Basically, the money you see is about 52% of our budget comes from the city. And then out of that, about 12% is covered by our 2% dues. So roughly about 40 cents of every dollar you see is what the city's paying out of the fund. So just kind of a reminder that I think you're all aware of that. The one thing we've kind of run up against a little bit, it's very minor, and like Devin said earlier, we really don't deal with the personnel stuff. We've had to add some training because of our rescue training, some mandatory training, and also we've had a real uptick in pub ed, which is a good thing. Karen's doing a really good job out there, and we're getting more requests. So our pub ed is up, and then our training is up. So what I requested is next year about $5,000 more into our training budget. And that would just basically cover the training and pub ed. We're seeing a spike more on that at the end of the year because our October is fire prevention month, and that's where we kind of a really big uptick in that. She's been busy multiple times, usually every day. And then, like I said, that the extra training is because we have the mandated training by the state with the different rescue functions. So that's kind of where we're at with that, and that's kind of the only adjustment. The other thing is the uptick in runs. We've been doing a 5-year run average. I think last year figuring about 425 over the last 5 years, but with 2018 we've had kind of a spike within the last few months. We've kind of reviewed the data, and there's no one kind of outlier that's causing this. It's pretty much spread across. So what we're kind of thinking is it's kind of becoming more of a norm just because of the growth of the city and just getting busier. So we're on track to do about 441 runs. Our projection would be about 430, but I would maybe estimate that we roughly try to figure it about 440 for next year instead of that 5-year average. And Devin usually figures those numbers. That being said, I think the last 4 years we've been under budget every year, so hopefully we can kind of continue to stay there, but that's just the kind of one minor adjustment.
So under the wages part-time, I did not, Scott made me aware of this, but we've been, with the numbers that we've had, we've been under the last 16 and 17 by about $40,000. So even if this trend were to continue into 2019, we should be okay, and with that, then we'll be able to see then for 2020 whether or not.
Yeah, it's not like a red flag, like we're not going to be there. It's just more of that portion of it, kind of moving the money to make sure that we're kind of covering it, because I know going forward that's going to be steady in that training because of the additional training. So
Scott,
kind of more of an adjustment.
Could you make it the next year at a flat budget, no increase of $13,000?
For, you mean?
Your entire budget.
Overall operating?
Yeah. Because it's only a $13,367 increase over last year. Could you do a flat?
It's a 2%. You're forced, you have to do anything. I think if we go back a year though, last year we cut 6%. So if you go 2 years back, we're still down 4% from 2 years ago because we did a 6% cut last year.
But knowing we're up against the levy limit or whatever that math equation will end up, you could do a flat. You have no real emergency, real things that are really pressing.
One thing you're going to have to be aware of, though, is in 2020, that's assuming everything goes well.
The
and the building
operational
opens,
expense goes up.
You're going to have just because it's a bigger building, a newer building, you'll have some savings, but you'll also have some, you'll probably be looking at more maintenance, building maintenance than you have right now because you'll have a facility.
I think there's a lot of variables that we haven't really.
And why I'm asking, Scott, because yours is so, to me, very level to where the minimal changes in almost every one I've highlighted. It's not a big increase, it's not a big decrease, but it's something that you could probably work through another year with.
Well, yes and no.
And we are getting a new building, by the way.
I try to be respectful of the budget process, to be honest with you. So by coming in, could I have added a lot of things? Yes. I try to be respectful, come in and keep it tight.
I know, you did a good job, but,
but it's a matter of, if you have to, I think if everybody in the city absolutely had to freeze their budget, we'd be forced to do that, and I would find ways. Would it be comfortable? No. But I think
of the 13, 9 of it is for salaries and benefits.
Salaries.
Yeah.
So, but,
Scott,
whatever we can do to try to be part of it, so.
Do we have any type of projection on the cost of the new building for this annual
operation?
Yeah, we did. I gave those to Brenda.
They were about I want to say between 55 and 70,000 in increased
We had,
operations.
and they were estimated, we had them.
And
they were-
what?
Increased operational cost. So it wasn't a lot.
It's gonna be.
It's always a lot,
It's
but-
definitely gonna be more just because of pure square footage.
Yeah, we did it by square footage.
Right, I was hoping that, because it's a newer building, more efficient, that maybe we see some cost reduction.
You have to kind of remember though,
Maybe, Randy, what we need to be looking at, instead of reducing the budget this year, is reducing the size of that new building in the future.
I guess you can do whatever if we kind of step back a little bit, we had the needs assessment was 34,000 square feet. Our latest rendition is 25,000, so we kind of have created those efficiencies as we can so far. So in my mind, if you're asking to make the building smaller, I don't really, think it's a good thing to do.
What portion is the city's responsibility of that increase?
52% is what we said.
52% of that
50,000.
So our portion of that is
30,000, 35.
30, 35.
And then, but you got to remember the 2% dues also come in, and they're roughly about 10%. I didn't get this year's yet, but I think we saw about 50-some thousand back from the state for our 2% dues that go straight into our budget. So.
You've been very good at stuff, Scott. You've got new apparatuses. You've got a new building coming. See the underlining theme here? And you're not asking for much, but maybe just take a break. I'm just suggesting, we're talking.
That's cutting 9,000 of the.
It doesn't matter, it adds
personnel,
up, but it adds up. I'm not saying 13.
Oh, yeah. And, and part of it, as you see, part of it is fuels went up
Yep,
considerably.
yep.
From what we budgeted.
It's out of your hands.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the bigger ones. And I can see what percent that was, but I think that was about a 30% increase. So overall, if we took that off, I think you're down probably at 1.5% maybe. So
Scott, how far down the road, this is a little off course maybe, but we need to be considering this. How far down the road are we from professional firefighter operation?
we've had professional firefighters for a long time.
I'm sorry.
But
good answer. Very good answer.
We're fortunate to have professional firefighters for part-time wages. So I think your question is, when do you want to start paying them what they're worth? Hopefully a while. Yeah, to go career. You know, the spike in the runs is a little bit, concerning, but it hasn't affected our response at all. And so far we're fully staffed, and we're able to still maintain, and we're probably one of the highest trained fire departments around and respond. So as of now, I don't know, and that's it, but it could be tomorrow, really. And a lot of it has to do with some of the other ancillary services we provide or could provide to other city departments that we're not sure what direction that's all going to go. So there's a lot of variables there. Good example is Stillwater. They run their full-time, but they do first responder, and they added, I think, they probably do less fire runs than us, but they add about 1,200 runs by doing first responder. So there's variables in there that, without knowing, would probably increase our full-time staff quicker.
So there's not in the foreseeable future where we would be going full-time.
Like I think I've said this before, my goal is to keep it at this staffing level as long as we can. But by saying that, I can guarantee nothing, because tomorrow we could have to do it. The staff we just hired, I believe, and that's part of our training, kind of getting back to Randy, is the budget is we're hiring new people, and we have to train them, and that costs extra too. But we're getting some good new people. I think our average age a couple years ago was 47. Creeping down a little, but we're still kind of up there in age, but we are getting new people, and they're taking the training. We have a lot of people go through driver's training. It all kind of costs money. Part of the thing that scares me to try to hit bare bones and do nothing is, I think we all know that really most cost in the city is wages and benefits. We, I believe, are the largest department. I know it's part-time employees in the city and probably the lowest budget for wages and benefits. So that being said, by keeping good equipment, by keeping a station and facilities, it keeps the interest up also. And that's kind of part of attracting people, is keeping a high standard for everything and everybody. So
You're concerned and talk about variables about that very question. You can't really answer that honestly because you've got a tick up with the construction out there. You've come many times telling us the run volume has increased because of that. So once that's done, we have a better picture.
We'll have a better picture, but we've kind of drilled down on it a little bit because we're hoping that's exactly what we'd find, but we're finding it's spread out across with fires.
So it's not just
It's not just that. We are definitely busier, but the runs, and then it's like I said, it's the last few months, but we're seeing it, and I was hoping that that's what we would find, that, okay, it's the majority of that. We always have quite a few runs. The severity now has gone up with the construction, but we're still seeing, the gas line strikes in the summer there. It's pretty much was across the board of where we're seeing our runs, the fires, the car fires. It's part of just growing. Everyone's going to tell you the same thing. We have more streets, we have more houses, more businesses, and that all adds to our volume from, alarms. We have a lot more alarm systems and sprinkler systems in town now that cause, that. So it's, and it takes a while, obviously, for trending, but we've been doing this. I think we had one year that was down a little back in 2015. We were at 397. Otherwise, we've been up in the mid to 400s. The high year was 13, but that was prior to me getting here, and I think they had 70 or 60 or 70 runs in one day with that big storm. So that was, again, kind of somewhat of an outlier there. Otherwise, we've been pretty steady in the mid 400s and kind of going up. So I'm not sounding the alarms, but it's just part of growing pains and getting bigger.
When do you take possession of that new $1.2 million ladder truck you just got?
We don't. It's $985,000, I believe, and I think it's November 1st. But we could probably find $200,000 with the add-ons if you want to. We could probably put a few more bells and whistles on it. But yeah, November 1st.
Wow. That's paid. Has that been paid out?
Yeah, we bonded for it, so
Right.
yes.
Is that one of the drop-offs? No.
Can you ask that question again?
He's asking if that's one of the things that drops.
Dropping off next
It'll
year.
be debt that's 10 years old that'll be dropping off.
We do have, I think we had one truck drop off, but
Any idea on what you're replacing? You're selling that, is that correct?
when,
The current ladder truck?
Yep.
Is that being sold? How is that? Scrap?
it's being sold, but it was also being traded in, but we had a couple blips with the testing and that, so that's going to be
Got it.
basically kind of a wash for
Got it.
the trade-in.
Back to the increase of the operating costs in the new building, the 50,000 that I quoted, that was based on a 34,000 square foot building. So Scott and I will go back and we'll relook at that number based on the square footage that we have.
Where'd you say you went to?
We're at about 25 right now.
Take a look at that.
About 200,000 in savings?
That was, right now, we're trying to finalize a contract with the construction manager and hopefully get the first schematic design done. And hopefully within about a week or two of us getting that schematic design done, the construction manager is going to have us a preliminary price on that actual design, so we can get basically today's dollars of what it'll really look like at that point.
Okay.
Any more?
No.
I want to commend you on doing a great job keeping your budget in line. That's, you know what, it's kind of like the old adage, you need something done, you go to the most important, or you go to the busiest person to get it done, right? You need a budget slash, you go to the one that's good at slashing his budget. I wouldn't ask you to do that this year, Scott.
Well, I just think that the council has been very supportive of us. I also like to thank our partners, because really part of us being a successful fire department is having Troy, the village and the township being partners and making it work for everybody. And I think it works well for all of us. And in my tenure here, they've been good partners, and I'd like to thank them and the support of the council. But mostly it's really thank the firefighters, because they're the ones that are really saving you a lot of the money and committing the time and effort.
All right, any other questions? Thanks, buddy.
Parks, Mike is here. Overall, it went up about $5,000. There was some reduction, a little bit, in personnel costs. Again, we went back and looked at, did kind of historical average of how, when we were budgeting, how we were assigning the public work maintenance crew. And so there were some shifts there, but he's outlined in his narrative what other increases and decreases there are. So if you have questions.
Is that where the contractual services go up because of your blank plans or whatever you were calling them?
Lakefront. No, we're talking parks.
Oh, I'm jumping. Never mind.
I'm sorry. I was doing parks. That's the next in line. Lakefront, he indicated there was an increase because of pest control down at weed control, pest control, portable toilet rentals.
Or
Is that the contractual agreements where that is falling under? 3 of 6? Jump 10 grand?
what was the?
Yes, that would be for general park maintenance. Let's see what he has in there. Oh, that 10,000 increase is actually for the goats, which this year was paid out of room tax funds, or excess room tax funds, and he's proposing that it be put in the budget this year. Tom actually asked for that last year, and then we kind of came up with this other plan for, and then the other increase that I was just discussing is in the Lakefront Park section of it.
What pest control is there? Is that mosquitoes or?
Grub control.
Grub, really?
Jacket beetles.
Yeah.
But that's going from 10 to 12, so that's actually only a $2,000 increase under Lakefront Park. So the major increase, though, is the proposal to have the goats now as part of the operational budget.
For how long?
So apparently when the goats were first brought in, it was kind of a 2-year commitment. From what I understand, it takes a 2-year cycle in order to kill the buckthorn completely. So this previous summer was kind of the first year. Next year would be the second year, and then after that we'd reassess and see if we want to continue with the program if it's been successful. But to see it through, I think it's important to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Working well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you go up Prospect Park,
Yeah.
you can definitely tell where they've been and where they haven't. So what they'll do is they'll kind of go back where they've been this year and kind of hit those areas one more time, make sure it's a total kill, and then they'll move on and so on and so forth. So it's a neat kind of natural program, something different, innovative.
Yeah, so should we be owning our own goats?
Oh boy, I don't know about that.
It's the craziest thing that we pay people for the privilege of babysitting and feeding their animals.
Yeah, should own a few goats myself, apparently.
You're kind of serious, aren't you?
I'm kind of serious, yeah.
Wow. Right?
Just have to remember next year to make sure they're not here for the fireworks.
/ administrator farmer.
Sure. Right on, Randy.
Yeah.
So you've only been using them in Prospect Park so far, is that correct?
Prospect Park, up Vine Street on the south side of Vine Street. They've been in there for a little bit. There's a walking trail in there, but those are kind of the 2 primary areas. Yep.
What you could do, Randy, is you could do yoga at night with them. Well, no, as a revenue source, because I know that's a thing now. So.
Managed by the council, since we all have a bunch of BS, right?
Any other questions on your parks? Community development, really there are no changes at all. He gave, a summary of activity in the department. You did authorize an adjustment for the community development clerk up there, and that's reflected in the. So overall, that budget's about $2,500 increase for community development. All of the operational costs remain the same.
For the most part, that this department pays for itself.
Yeah.
Right, because you have fees and whatever, building inspection as well. Like the building fees, you have to prove that what you're charging is what you're paying out to staff and stuff. You can't just raise building permit fees to whatever you want. They have to be, you have to justify it based on what you're spending on it, yeah. Animal control, I don't even know if I have that in there. Maybe that stays the same pretty much every year. We had a slight increase because there was a slight adjustment in Kathy Pellner's contract. That went up $400. Police department is next.
Step up to the podium, the chopping block.
There's no real blood there yet.
At the last meeting, preliminarily, you approved the new officer position and the addition of a lieutenant, deletion of a sergeant, and the community service officer instead of the part-time officer. So that's all reflected in what you have in front of you today.
So overall, it's an increase of $177, right? $177,140.
Yes.
Okay.
And probably 90. Oh, what's that? 90 and
And most of it is going into salaries.
quite a bit. Yeah. Yep. And Jeff's outlined, as you through each of the departments, the increases he's requested. He's outlined what they're for operational.
Yeah, but to touch on some of it, like the contractual services under the police administration goes from 11 to 15,000.
I think that's the EAP,
What's that again? EAP.
Employee Assistance Program, that
Okay.
I actually kind of pitched for the entire city.
Okay. So that could be spread out, or
Well, I think the 4,502 estimate was the estimate just for the police department. I think that it increases to around 7,000 and change if it's for the entire city. But I think it's a program that the city should look at some point. At minimum, I want it for my department because I think of the benefits. But absolutely, the fire department, EMS, and every city worker should have those services available to them to help them and their families through different challenges that they may come across.
And I know it's not one for one. Under our health insurance program, the counseling is something that's covered.
would it decrease our health insurance overall?
No. I mean, because we don't know which employees are going to counseling and which ones because of HIPAA rules and stuff.
Right.
But I think what Jeff is proposing is that the police department and probably your fire and your EMS are more unique
Absolutely.
situations because they're dealing with more traumatic, not that people who aren't in those departments possibly aren't having traumatic things in their lives, but
Right, but it's more of the buildup of post-traumatic stress over time, over one's career. We're hiring younger and younger people and exposing them to this, and I think it's an investment in our staff to invest in their mental and physical wellness.
And this augments already existing insurance or replaces?
it would depend on whether an individual employee no, it would not replace it. Any employee still could if they wanted to under our insurance plan. And there's limitations. I think they have a limitation on how many sessions, that type of thing.
Yeah, significant limitations on the amount that's paid toward the deductible too.
Well, we have the deductible, but that aside, there's nothing prohibiting if they go and see this counselor through here, they could also, if they chose, see a counselor if they had insurance through the city. They could also continue to do that. So there wouldn't be a reduction because the health insurance isn't broken down like that. We don't pay so much for counseling and so much for.
Right, but the additional things about this employee assistance program is that it also offers financial services, or financial, not consultation, but if you're having trouble balancing your checkbook and paying your bills, you can go and talk to somebody and they'll help you through that. If something non-work related happens, right, you can they have all these other services that you can use to help you or your family members through that. I think it's important that we at least look at. Obviously, I didn't put anything. I know how how it was with Scott, that he's able to keep his budget pretty limited, right? I didn't think that I was asking for anything that I didn't feel we need.
Jump into training, Jeff.
Training.
Your passion is pretty obvious in your narrative, but what are we not doing? What are we going to do different than what we've not done in the past as far as training? What do we
Nothing
miss?
right now. I mean, that's really the brunt of the issue is how much of my training budget is exhausted in travel expenses because there's no training offered over here. In law enforcement, the laws are different, the requirements are different. You send someone to Minnesota for training when we can to alleviate the lodging and travel expenses, but generally when we're sending people to training, it's Green Bay, Appleton, Milwaukee, Madison. And they're 3-day trainings, you know, it's 3 nights in a hotel, that's the gas, that's the food. 85% of my training budget is exhausted in travel expenses. Because for the most part, the state offers free training. It's getting them there that's problematic. So are you talking about training for patrol or training
Still
in
in
administration?
administration.
So right now we have $2,000. That's to train myself, my lieutenant, and my administrative assistant and 2 clerical office clerks. $2,000. One of the things that I would like to do is be able to take part in one of the national conferences every year, whether it be through the FBI National Academy and Associates,
Chiefs Association of Chiefs.
or the International Chiefs of Police Association Conference, which are generally not anywhere around here. That requires between $1,000 and $1,500 to go to one of those. I'm trying to get to the average cost of training for officers to that $1,500 to $2,000 mark a year. Right now, with 30 people at essentially $15,000 in training,
So early,
it's about
it's
$500 an
a little
officer.
early to ask, but is that a priority?
Training?
And I'm assuming yes.
Training is a huge priority.
A want or a need. You know, it's budget time. We got to ask the tougher questions.
Yeah, I hear you. And training is a need. I mean, training is going to keep you from getting sued. It's going to keep people from getting hurt. I'm trying to find the right page.
Well, now I'm on the patrol, 3 of 5 this year. That's where I am, I guess. And
I thought you were still on administration. So
nope, I'll jump past that. That's my last question.
I think, yeah. I think I could probably. That was a hard one to estimate because I didn't know if I was going to get that administrative lieutenant position. So there was some guesswork in there. But if you're talking a $2,000, that's $6 for the 3 administrators, and then, you know, another $1,500. I could probably whittle that one down if you needed to whittle some down. I could probably whittle some police administration training out.
Well, you've got modest increases, you know, again, and
There
now under
are
patrol,
little increases, and most of those are increased costs.
just in patrol expenses and supplies, it's a $24,000 increase. If I'm-
11 of that is for
Fuel.
Yeah, fuel, why that jump?
Gas prices.
Projection.
Just because, okay.
But again,
Projection, working with Brenda on
Yeah.
what we think the gas prices are going to be next year.
So it's not more motor vehicles, it's the price of gas?
Price of gas based on a 3 or 5 year average of usage.
Yep, based on a three-year usage of average, or usage average. But it's $3 per gallon unleaded and $3.25 per gallon diesel that we're doing. And there has been an uptick in usage when we were adding patrol vehicles, obviously, or public works, dump trucks and stuff. So there's a little bit of both, but the primary is the increased price in fuel compared to the 18 budget.
I mean, so you're training even, you know, with the patrol training, you've got almost, what, $18,000 in training increase between the administration and the patrol.
Yes. And I'm hoping that at some point when we actually have hotel convention centers in this area, then that is going to help tremendously to be able to cut back on those costs, because then the state will send instructors here and we can host trainings where I can not only send several officers to the training, but then we get free spots too. And we don't have to send them across the state to training. So I'm hoping in the future that that can be readdressed also. The other increase is in safety equipment of $3,000 and activity supplies of $2,500. And essentially what those are we have things that we recycle from year to year to year. Before you blink an eye, they're 11, 12, 15 years old. And you have to buy new stuff. The camera warranty we have is a year. So we get a new camera, and 16 months later, the camera breaks and we have to get a replacement. That's $250, you know, with our body cameras and squad cameras.
Can't we capitalize that stuff?
Not the replacement.
They're just too small.
It's not, usually you want 10-year life or
Yeah,
whatever.
not worth it.
They don't have a 10-year, they don't have a 10-year life, do they? Normally, for anything we're going to capitalize, we like it to kind of match the length of the bond, so, which is either 10 or 20.
You know, that's where a lot of these increases are coming from, is because this new technology, you have to replace it on. Otherwise, it breaks, and then you're without it, and then it costs you more in the long run. And I'd like to try and get a lot of our equipment on a replacement plan, so that we don't run into the issue where we have 3 squads without radars, you know, or rifles that are bent and dented and damaged, where if we need to use them, we're putting someone at risk to get injured.
And
How do you bend a rifle?
Well, first of all, they were in racks in the squad cars that were intended for shotguns. So that's an issue. And we've had some traffic crashes.
Okay.
You know, and they sit in the car and vibrate, wiggle them back and forth for 24 hours a day, you know, 7 days a week. It creates damage to the coating on the outside of the soft aluminum, and once that coating is damaged, it doesn't take much to ding those up.
So in patrol alone, you've got an increase of 142,000. 116 of that is salary increases, and the rest is basically fuel and training.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So it's a little skinnier than you think as far as your ask, except for training.
Yeah, it feels like I'm asking for the world, but when you look at it item by item, I don't feel that way.
So it's about 21,000 increase in training
Is that what
between all of his
Between all three.
sub-departments, yes.
So in essence, you're asking for 21,000 plus 8,000 for the EMP, or the, what'd you call it?
EAP, that was 4,000, wasn't it?
4,502.
Okay, so spread across.
So it's 25 grand.
Yeah. Which in a big picture is not a big ask, I just gotta say, but up against what we're up with levies, that's what.
I understand. Is the animal control stuff part of my budget?
No. That's a separate. It's a
We're
separate.
going to ask you the questions about it, though.
Hey, that's fine. That's
No,
fine.
I'm kidding.
It's a separate department, if you will. It's under your auspices, but
Right.
it's
Like parking.
It's like recycling is under Mike. It's a separate line item.
Well, and then there is a $1,000 and change increase request for a new lease vehicle. I don't know if you saw that in there. It's basically an extra lease vehicle to replace an old used detective vehicle that we have at a cost of $1,000. I think it's a pretty good deal.
Jeff, is there any possibility of repo or whatever we repossess from people as far as vehicles that we could repurpose for parking?
Or this,
Or the
other thing
community
potentially would
service.
be a
Asset
CSO.
forfeiture type stuff are you talking about?
Yeah.
They've gotten considerably more difficult, and if you do it at the state level, then all the proceeds, or at least half of the proceeds, have to go to the school fund.
Oh.
If you do it at the federal level, It almost takes an act of Congress.
Well, let's say we go to auction and you have a cars you're getting rid of. Are those our
I'm
cars?
sorry, I
or-
didn't, auction, what?
Your auctions you have with bikes and things you've collected, you don't have vehicles that you have confiscated or
No, the only ones that we auction off are the ones that
use?
the people that we tow a vehicle regarding whether it was involved in a crime or whether we towed it in a snow event, and the people no longer want the vehicle, they sign it over to us and we auction them. And there's an account for those.
Can't use those. You can't repurpose those. No?
I'm sure you could, but they don't want them for a reason.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I guess you're missing, I'm talking about, forfeitures.
Yeah. If any of the vehicles that you get into these things would be able to use for, well, CSO or for parking or whatever.
Right. It would have to be the right fit, right? I mean, you don't want a large size sedan to be doing the parking enforcement because now you're blocking a lane of traffic when you're trying to do parking enforcement. You don't
I'm
want...
just thinking outside the box.
I hear
I don't
that.
know what you have in
We
inventory.
thought about it.
Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of related to this is to remember that with the CSO position that you had, there's a $40,000 budget item for a vehicle. So
That's not in here.
it's not shown there, it's on the totals page.
Okay.
Because it goes under, that's where your squad cars go.
And I'm assuming that we can get something gently used at a reduced price, but I still haven't. That's doing some online searching to get a quote.
So that was just something, if you're talking about an area potentially, instead of 40, could you do 25 or something?
Correct.
I don't know that answer, but that's, like I said, that's kind of not directly in your budget, but
Right.
it's related to it. So just something to think about when we get to that final page.
Kind of an out of bounds question, but if we were to hold off on that CSO program for a year, what kind of savings would that be to the 2019 budget?
But the $10,000 in the salary and whatever the vehicle costs.
And then 40,
So it'd be 50
so
grand.
50,000. And was there a second lieutenant?
It's
position?
a reclassification of the detective sergeant into a detective lieutenant, administrative lieutenant.
That was
Gotcha.
about 11, 12? Was that what
It
it
was a
was?
$12,000 increase difference, but yeah.
Gotcha.
And I don't know what the insurance increase was, or the
That was part
retirement
of it.
increase was. That was
Well, the
part of it.
insurance isn't going to, health insurance would be the same no matter where they are.
I was talking about retirement, I'm sorry.
That won't matter either.
Okay.
Because
It's about
it's the same
$12,000.
employee, you're just, well, yes, but that 12,000 included insurance and, or retirement FICA.
Okay.
Any other questions on that one?
In your opinion, could CSO be held off another year? Or you want to get that program going?
Yeah, I would like to get it going.
That's when you ask, want or need?
Really, that's a need.
Is there anything in your budget for this year that you won't be using, that you could maybe use for some one-time expenses that you would need for next year, but could take care of this year if
In
we
this current year's
change
budget?
things? Yeah.
Yeah, I've already been doing a little bit of that. I was trying to wait until a little bit later at the end of the year to sit down with Brenda and see how many savings I've got. Because I've got one of those positions that was granted last year for the 2018 budget that won't be filled until March or April next year. So truth be told, there's even a portion of that new added position for 2019 that won't be filled for the first quarter of the year.
Okay.
Because we just closed the application process, now we have to do testing. We won't have a list ready to hire from until late February, early March.
Let's say for sure after the first of the year. But.
So, there's going to be some cost savings there too right away, right off the bat. But yes, Brenda and I are working through that to see what I can use from savings from this year to minimize the impact of next year's budget, yes.
Yeah, something like the CSO vehicle, if we've got some savings somewhere this year, you might be able to reallocate it.
Yes. That is on my radar. But we've still got a couple of months left.
Yeah.
Right? I was going to wait until we got a little bit into November
Okay.
so we could better estimate where we were going to be.
But we know we have a full year of a patrol position that has not been filled, so you're talking $90,000.
Okay.
We give or take, but 24 of that was granted for me to spend on the remodel, and
Okay. Yep.
my overtime budget is going to be taking a hit here because I'm 5 officers short right now. So I was waiting. I was trying to be responsible, right? I don't want to go thinking we're going to have $30,000 to spend and go spend it, and then I'm over budget, right? I don't want that scenario to happen. But yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Anything? Thanks, Chief.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Thank you.
Not yet.
The last big one we have is Public Works. You'll note that within the department, there's in each of the sub-accounts, there's substantial changes. What we did, there were a number of them, such as stop-and-go lights, sidewalks, and crosswalks. Some of the smaller that we were trying to assign budget numbers for personnel. And after talking with Mike and Deb, we just didn't see the need to do that. It's street maintenance that all kind of falls under Public Works. So we essentially, everything is in street maintenance, snow and ice removal, but we left shade tree just because we, kind of want to keep urban forestry in that, so we have an idea of what we're spending on that. But overall, the department's about 105,000 up, and of that, 40 of it is the city share of the new position that you approved, because the rest is going to stormwater. But Mike's outlined his changes. I don't know if you have any specific questions for him.
What'd you say, 105? It's 114,000.
The total budget that I...
Oh, wait, what's your correction? No.
Correct, with the change that because there was another 11,000 got put in as 1,000 instead of 12,000, so yes.
Service repair buildings, 2 of 18 went from, up $4,000?
That is reflective of, so those are like contracted services for City Hall, HVAC, pest control, elevator maintenance, generator maintenance, and trans alarm.
They went up, why, $3,000 or $4,000?
Because generator maintenance wasn't included in that previous years, so that's been included now.
Which actually kicked in. We were on generator power yesterday for
Yeah,
a couple hours
right.
because something happened with our service here. So
Yep.
anyway, that has been a lifesaver for us down here several times.
Yeah.
We've been all power, but we've been able to keep operations going.
And then kind of in that same budget line item, 247 and 299, service repair of buildings and other. What I did was, in this 247 line item, instead of 2,000, it's actually supposed to be 5,000. And so what I did was I combined 247 and 299 and just put it in 247 for 2019 at 6. But I mean, there would be based upon previous year's expenditures, we could reduce that,
In 247 last year, the amount that they had requested was 5,000, but it ended up in the budget at 2 for whatever reason. And so what he's saying, it really isn't that much of an increase because...
Right.
You're saying a 2,800 increase,
Right.
right? Total?
Right.
Supplies and expenses, $10K increase, just, I don't see where that came from.
Supplies and expenses.
What page, Randy?
3 of 18?
3?
3.
So it goes, that's a 2-page thing, Randy, so that carries
Oh.
over from the page before.
Got it.
Okay.
So supplies and expenses actually were the same. just so you're aware, under emergency government, in the past, 10% of the wages of the EMS director, who was designated as emergency government director, went to this account. As so 90% went to EMS. So I did budget for that again, just so it's in there, depending on how everything ends up. But
Page 6 of 18, why did the engineering service, is that because lack?
No,
that's there was a separate thing. That's that. Well, you can
All
explain it.
those
Mike.
so this.
items you were looking at?
So originally we had put, so when I first got here, the engineer, I'm kind of going to bat for the engineer that's not here. Our specs in detail plates are out of date, and there's a bunch of contradictions within our specs and detail plates. So when we're out having our engineer inspecting work, there's, contractors are pointing to different items within the spec that, why are you following it here, and it says it over here, that kind of thing. So it's I have a quote from Bolton and Mank that Tom Sifko had gotten, and it's, to first goal is to add missing information that is not standard specifications but the city is currently implementing on projects. So we're out there implementing these, specs and details that we're expecting our contractors to follow, but it's not actually within our spec book. So it's bringing stuff that's not even in there and actually putting it in there. And I know I originally put it in the CIP, but per recommendation, they wanted me to put it in the operating budget. So that's kind of the number that's a reflection of that. To update, add missing information, updating the detail plates, taking out old, putting in new. The quote was at $40,000 from Bolton and Mank.
But ultimately, that saves money or gives us more.
It basically just brings us up to current standards, and it helps us when we're out in the field. When we're putting together bids, bid packets, that kind of thing. Our specs and detail plates are consolidated and they're tight. There's no loose ends within it, so that contractors can't find the loopholes within the specs and try to kind of, cut edges, cut corners, so to speak.
And it's it'd be a one-time expense, so
Yep.
it would not be in the following year.
Yep.
I
know
there may be some money might want to put away for in the following budgets. I don't know how much, but just to make sure they're kept up to date.
Yeah.
But
in this budget, I don't know if Tom had come to this to request this in previous years, but Sifco had attained this quote back in 2017. So it's been a couple of years and been trying to update it.
I don't
since.
think that's ever come to this.
no, it has
Okay.
not been in the budget before.
Okay.
It was not requested.
Yeah. So from what I understand from our engineering companies that do work, Bolton and Mank and SEH is, it's long overdue that we update it and get the contradictories out of there, so that when we are doing stuff out in the field, that it's not battling with one another, because our detail plate shows one thing and our specifications tell another. So that's what that increase is for.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. Absolutely. Another possibility would be to have, going back to the spec is, just maybe bite one thing off of here every year over the next 3 years and do it that way. That's a possibility as well. Breaking it down.
Up that 40,000 to.
Yeah, break it down. 8, was 40 divided by 3. I don't know.
45 by 315.
Yeah, 15, 15, 15. So that's another possibility as well, to reduce the amount.
Another option would be, if council and the finance committee felt it important to get it done sooner than later, would be to use council contingency for 2018 and to start the process this year.
How much is in there?
Yeah.
We're at 60,000 yet.
60?
For this year?
We haven't spent.
Have we spent anything, Devin?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
We will. I mean, there'll be some things by the end of the year.
Should wait for winter to get done with.
Well, but
We can.
well,
Just in case we get pounded by snow, and if it's still there, we could start it.
Right.
Just trying to think ahead. I mean, we had that storm in April.
Right. Yeah, I know our snow and ice control budget is over, and we still have, like you said, November, December this year. But
You didn't go out on Sunday, did you, for nothing to?
You know, I thought about calling Kevin to put out the, you know, some salt or something, but, you know, interest, no. The phone calls we would have got. Pretty snow, though.
It was
Able to
pretty.
enjoy it. Not have to worry about coming in.
So it's something that we could break up between 3 years, and then depending on contingency, depending on the snow, we could just get it all done this year
Right.
through contingency. Is that what we're kind
Yeah.
of? Okay.
71K in personnel increase.
Well, most of that is a shift between the sub-departments in Public Works. Where are you looking at?
11 of 18. Under street maintenance.
Some of that is the position you approved, part of that, and some of it is we got rid of, if you look at the personnel going towards the back, street lighting no longer has any personnel
Right,
costs.
right.
We shifted them, we consolidated them, and it also the employees aren't having to keep track hour by hour. Well, I worked an hour in street lighting, and they'll be able to just assign it to street maintenance, and so about half of it's a position, half of it is just the shift between the departments. Brenda, is there a contingency anymore for snow removal? Remember, we used to have that? Eliminate that?
We eliminated that with last year's budget, but
Okay.
we can.
Okay, I was trying to remember.
Do you have enough in snow? And I mean, we spent. We're up to what, 31.3 as of 9:30.
Right, it was an unusual year. I mean, if you look back at 16 and 17,
right.
those were more typical years for us.
So right in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm comfortable with that number.
And I went back when I allocated that out. I went back 5 years with everybody's how much they worked in each department, each employee, so that we got a better handle on where they were actually working. I mean, you never know. It's just like everything else. When you budget, you're guessing as to what is going to happen.
Explain to me that $14,000 narrative of signage from public safety. I know we always send you sign requests,
Yep.
but you're saying it was budgeted, we didn't use it, or it was absorbed through it?
So there was a contingency, and I think it was in relation to the Hanley crosswalk, and that money was never spent. And so any request that came from safety committee, we were able to absorb it within the sign budget out of the public works operating budget, because it had been smaller requests, $50, $75, $100 here and there. We could absorb that, and we never really touched into that sign contingency that was in the budget.
So you're just decreasing it?
Yep. I just took that right out. Well, I left $1,000 in there.
So you're thinking you can absorb it again?
Yep. Well, vote a bunch of signs and safety. I think it'll be
These two
okay.
go crazy about it.
Yeah.
We like our signs.
Yeah. So shade control, I'm on 1818.
Yep.
Explain to me the increase, 65,000?
In the
Shade tree.
Again, that was a shift in where, well, if you look in 16 and 17, the amount with that was actually
Yeah.
expended, and this was another one where we shifted from some of those smaller accounts. Quite a bit of it went to shade tree, because we have, we have one employee that's working there probably 50 to 60% of his time, and the new employee that you approved
30%.
is, what was it, 30?
30%.
30% of that new employee is going to.
So explain to the general public what you mean by, you say shifting out of smaller
So
accounts.
let's say all of the personnel costs for the public works were $500,000. We'll just use that as a base number. In the past, we had a number of small sub-accounts like street lighting that maybe would be budgeted for $3,000, and stop and go lights for $4,000, and crosswalks for $2,000. Well, that was a guess, and if you had a bunch of crosswalks, so what we did this year is still the same $500,000. We're not, but now we're just saying, okay, we're going to allocate it to street maintenance, snow removal, and shade tree. And we're not going to assign, so someone does
Comes in and fixes a stoplight.
Or something, that'll just go to street maintenance, instead of allocating $37.12 to street lighting. So it's not any more money, it's just where we're allocating it to. And trying to save some time for the employees too, so they're not having to track every single minute of where they're going. And we can always, you know, if there be an issue, like we're doing that with shade tree urban forestry, we're trying to keep track of that because partially for grant purposes, and, you know, we know that program is going to, you know, in the future continue to get larger with the EAB. But if we see a need, if Mike sees something where all of a sudden he feels there's a substantial amount of costs going, we'll pick street lighting again. We can always shift this then next year and say, okay, now we really need to keep track of how much we're spending on fixing street lights. So again, the 500, the amount we're spending on personnel isn't changing. It's just within the public works budget where we're assigning it.
Okay.
The Emerald Dashboard, again, 18 of 18. That increases 4,000, but I recall something about over time or not too distant future, that's going to need to be increased, like there's going to be a jump
Right.
for the need.
Yep.
Do you feel comfortable with that 4,000 increase next year?
Yep. I do. And it's in relation to, you know, that jump in the numbers in relation to the urban forestry grant that I submitted for the DNR to show that, you know, we are increasing our line item for emerald ash borer management, so to help us possibly get that grant for next year. But then, yeah, like you said, as part of that grant, I'm going to do a urban forestry management plan, where it'll take a look at not only ash trees but all the trees within the boulevards, public right-of-ways, and how we maintain them, how we dispose of them, how we're going to manage them, the costs associated with that. So, but for next year's purposes, that number is just for the amount of work that we want to tackle.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that one? So I think if you know, we've gone through everything. If you go back to the summary page, which I think is towards the very beginning of the expenditures, the one that you were looking at the beginning there, Joyce, with it has all the department totals on it. A couple of things that I wanted to mention again for potential where you could maybe make some cuts. We have and I know you never know, but we have this general contingency in there every year, and we don't always use that. We could potentially reduce that by some amount, put it down to 40 or whatever, because unless it's something major, if something came up, you could always look at the undesignated fund balance.
Where are you at, Devin?
On the summary page, should be right at the beginning of the
Under expenditures tab?
So, expenditures, so like the second page of the expenditure section, which is kind of the summary. So I'm looking at the general contingency, and I don't think in the last 5 years we've ever spent it all. So that might be, you know, you could potentially, unless Brenda's uncomfortable with that, but.
No, we have a healthy fund balance.
Yep. So you could reduce that to, what the intent of this is if something comes up, again, the snow removal thing like Randy brought up, you know, that's what the intent of it is. But you could probably reduce that again because, as you said, our fund balance is healthy enough that if there was a major something that came up, you could.
What's healthy?
At the end of 17, we were at 56% unassigned fund balance as a percent of next year's budget. Now we're going to be using a big portion of that
For the fire hall.
for the fire hall, and so we'll be down to 32%.
Our policy says 27.
Yes.
Between what, 25 and 27 and a half? So,
Okay.
and we'll still be above that. And we anticipate it'll probably go up this year a little bit too, because of building revenue and, you know, some other things, but.
It's not good practice to operationally use the savings we have, and that's something we should not.
Well, and I'm also thinking that even though that's our policy, our set policy, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Ellers was saying if we get anywhere near that number, that they're going to be looking at our bond rating again. So even though that's our policy, and we visited that about a year ago, I can't remember to what extent they said we could spend it down, but it wasn't much before they said that it was gonna impact our bond rate.
Most of the expenditures you've made out of that fund balance have been for capital items, and I think they have less heartburn about, the Ward Avenue building, or when we did Tower Road and those type of things.
But they're gonna be looking at some serious bonding coming our way.
Right. But if you continually use it for operations, you are correct. That will not make them happy.
And contingency really is not capital, that's really operational.
Correct. It's more for operational things. It was just a thought. We haven't spent it in the last, we've never.
You're
gone to
talking the
full
60,000.
The 60,000. What I'm saying is you could potentially reduce it to I'm just trying to look ways to, 40 or 30, and I think you'd still be fine. You don't know. I mean, something could come up, but, and as I mentioned, the other thing that is there is that, whatever you decide to do with the CSO vehicle, because that's reflected there. Whether there will be savings at the end of this year that he could do something from that.
Well, we do have the undesignated fund, right? Or what's the reserve?
That's the undesignated fund balance, correct.
Which? The one that's got, what, $4 million in it?
That's the undesignated fund balance. But in 2019 or 2020, we'll be using a chunk of that.
Two of it.
$2
For
million.
the fire department, correct.
Which drops it to 32, you said, %?
Correct, yep, approximately.
Okay.
And again, the percentage that we stated was. or the
Between
guidance,
25 and 27 and a half.
That's the minimum. That's our policy.
Correct.
I know we took action on it, correct, to do it that way, because I made the motion.
The fire,
At
for the fire
council?
hall, yeah.
It could be changed to, what, to use less of that and bond a little more, or is that too late?
It's not too late. Ellers is looking at using, right now, the projections I'm having them use is the 2 million. We'll look at what that does to the debt levy. And at that time, if we are uncomfortable with it or think it's more favorable than we thought, we can change it.
Okay. I think there's some room to negotiate that out.
And I should explain too, capital projects, we're working on the 5-year capital project plan right now. The department heads have reviewed it. Ellers is doing the debt projections based on that. And we would anticipate bringing that to the council at the next meeting on Monday. But that is if we get the information back in a timely manner to get that out to you. Otherwise, we'd delay it one more meeting. And that will give you a lot of information about future bonding.
But again, the suggestion was just if you were looking for a potential place to reduce by some amount. And then the other one, obviously, again, like I mentioned, is the CSO vehicle, whatever you decide to do with that. Because that's 40,000 that was added to this year's budget. So with the one adjustment that was made, the levy calc now, the increase in the mill rate is back up to about 20, just over 20 cents. So it stands at 5.477 is where we're at right now with the mill rate.
With the increase of.
The only
The
adjustment that
legal?
you've made so far is the 20,000 for the
legal.
attorney.
So it's back up to what, did you say?
5.477. And every 17,000 gets you a penny. So that's either direction.
Sure.
Okay, so on this proposed expenditures for the library contribution, our agreement states that we have to have the average of the last 3 years,
This is above that.
and the average of the last 3 years is 350,217.
Is that? Well, this is the highest we've been for 3 years, correct?
No, we were higher for one of the years when they first opened on Mondays.
$40,000.
So.
Well, okay, we can get
No,
that.
I visited Tina.
Yeah, no,
and
if
we
that's
did-
the case, it'll have to be whatever that 3-year average is.
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't-
350,217.
Okay, I will put that in. So that's $2,900 increase.
Increase?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going the wrong way.
So that is 2/100ths of a cent, so it's not.
You are pretty vocal about our budget last cycle.
Yeah,
This seems worse.
it is, and I haven't started in on this yet. I mean, we've got, I'm looking a year ahead. We got some serious issues here. So we have an increase in our budget of, what about, well, we took down our cushion from, levy cushion from 800 and change down to
92.
192, with an increase of what, 480 for, what was the increase? Oh, 581. All right.
581.
Oh.
Last year's total increase would have been 340.
So we have a proposed increase of 581 this year.
Right.
Last year, 340. We have a cushion left of 192. This is definitely not going in the right direction. And we've got a serious problem when that happens, because that, I mean, at that point, we're cutting budgets because we're at levy limits and there's nothing we can do about it. And we have no alternatives other than to cut budgets. So, I have been trying to figure some numbers here, and I mean, I'm looking at the different expenditures. You know, the one thing that we really haven't talked about, and I don't, you know, I think that we need to talk about this. I'm glad you brought up the library, because I think the library is a great example of what happens when you have to tighten your belt. And all we've talked about is, are these increases necessary? We haven't gone to any of the department heads yet. None of the questions have said, is there any way you can save us money in your current budget today? If you had to cut your budget 10%, what would you do? And we need to do that every year. This isn't just about, oh, are the increases justified? The question is the current budget justified without any increases? And we haven't had that discussion yet with anybody. And I think that we need to have that discussion. I think that every one of these departments needs to look at their current budget and say, where can we cut money, save money? And back to the library, you know, we got hit hard in the recession. What did we do? I mean, some of it was draconian. Had to close the library on Monday, and we started each year for the past, or for several years in a row, started each year with a projected deficit budget, but came in under budget every single year. That's because every department was looked at, every expense was looked at, and right now we probably got the best run library, bar none, anywhere in the county. And are we bare bones? Yeah, we are. Could they use more money? Absolutely. Do they deserve more money? Absolutely. But you know what? I know that you all are familiar with the issue. If we were at our exempt amount right now that was dictated by the state, we'd be paying about twice. Every one of the joint communities would be paying about twice what we're currently paying in. And that would be one hefty budget. And I gotta believe that if we were doing that, that library would still be coming in asking for an increase this year, right? So, I know all the other libraries in the system are asking for increases, and they are under that state statute where they do have to hit their exempt amount, and they're pretty well funded, and they haven't had to go through the ordeal that we went through. But I would imagine if they did, that they would still be all open, and they would be running very efficiently. So everybody, and it's not just those of us up here, I mean, every department head has got to understand where we're at right now. These are, I mean, you look at it relative to, like, the school district. Are these tax increases outrageous? No. Are they out of line? No, probably not. But they put us in peril. And we're in immediate peril. We don't have, I mean, we talked 2 years ago, we thought we had perhaps 3 years before we hit our levy limit. You know, at the end of last year, because of the budget savings that we had in EMS, because of the understaffing issues that we had, we thought maybe that added another year. And here we are back to, we got 1 year. We got less than a year. I mean, arguably we do have a year because this budget will be covered, but after that, we're in a world of hurt. And so I don't know what our timeline is for approval of this budget, but my suggestion to every department head right now is go look at how you could cut your current budget and cut it, you know, look at what you can do for savings before we do anything here on, that's just my opinion, before we do anything here on recommending what to do on next year's budget.
I have to publish next week.
Okay?
I have to have something published next week.
You can publish that we're looking at the budget.
That's not how that works.
Okay. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I don't think we can approve
But
much of anything right now.
you know, that's all fine and good, but operationally, 70% of your budget is personnel.
I get it.
You know, that's the difficult part.
I
I mean,
know.
I'm not saying there aren't places you potentially could cut, but 70% of your budget's personnel, so that's what some of it would have to be in order to make a substantial dent in this.
Well, last year there were savings when, for example, the police said, all right, we aren't going to be able to hire somebody until several months into the year, so we can take a third of their salary, that person's
Right.
salary out.
Right.
So that's something that we can do, and that would probably...
Again, what we're talking about is the budget proposal for next year, the increases for next year. And I agree, I think we need to look at that. But what I'm talking about is taking our current budget and decreasing it. Everybody's got to find savings. Because if you don't, come next year, when we go through the budget process next year, these budget cuts are going to involve personnel. There's no doubt about it. If we run into the same situation we're looking at right now or even a year ago, we will be talking about cutting personnel.
So what's our target here as far as reducing by how much? Because, I mean, we don't want to use as much of the levy capacity that the unused levy capacity that we've got. I mean, that's 419,000.
Say that again?
Okay, so the unused levy capacity that we're using,
Right.
we need to cut way back on that.
Yes. Yes.
So that's really our target.
Yeah. So last year we blew right by 525. When we did that, did we put a cap on it?
No.
We did not.
We're at 527, that's what we ended up at.
Okay.
So what's the number you're looking for?
I'm not looking for any particular number. I'm just saying that we've got, you know,
But if we're going to try to figure out how much to
a
cut.
target.
Yeah, are you looking to decrease that mill rate from what it is at now, or?
I would like to. I
Slight
think that before. So we go to 546, 5.477. Is that right?
We're at 5.477, correct, Devin?
5.479 because of that library
Okay.
adjustment.
479. Okay. So we're jumping from 5.25 to 5.479.
5.27, we're up 20.4 cents.
That's just incredible.
One thing that you could potentially do, and that will help this year, is we do have that health insurance reserve, and which is used to cover, and that's what, 400, is that what's in there? The health insurance reserve? 400,000, 300 to 400,000. That was, remember, years ago, you put money aside from left over from the budget in case we had a huge increase in the health insurance. There's been a shift in the health insurance costs this year from the utilities to the whatever. I mean, I could quickly figure out what, you know what I'm saying? We could take some money out of that reserve, which would help your mill rate this year.
You're
It's
only
a-
Band-Aiding it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
You're just shifting.
But the effect of that is you would not be using up as much of your excess capacity.
So you're padding the levy if we were to tap that reserve.
You would be reduced, it'd be an additional revenue. It would just come out of, that's what it's designated for, is to cover increase in your health
Which
insurance.
is lessening the levy
You would be
usage.
lowering your mill rate, which would then be reducing the amount of the unused capacity that you'd be taking out this year.
You know, and we've got no guarantee what the state is going to do next year. We could see a reduced mill rate again, levy limit, right?
You
Depending
mean the
what they
shared
do.
revenue?
Depending upon what they do.
We don't get anything anyway. I mean, I'm not
I mean,
trying to be
that's
flip
just-
about it, but
I
if
mean, I get that, but I mean, that's just, it's all of
if
a
they were to
sudden-
cut 20%, that would be $32,000 for us, which is, as opposed to some municipalities, that would be a couple $100,000.
Was there a change to the law with the levy limit regarding police and fire expenditures?
What's that evaluation?
Not yet, I believe. There was talk. I don't think it passed. Let me look.
Okay.
What was our valuation increase?
Hold on.
Yeah, it went up.
About 28 million, the assessed went up.
And that got figured into the
Yes.
5.58, really?
Yep.
Joyce, I don't see that it got approved.
Okay.
In all honesty, if you're talking, and again, I don't know how much you want to reduce it by, but you're going to have to do something with personnel, in my opinion, because I don't think operationally there's a lot of fluff in there. I mean, there's things they proposed this year to increase, but we dealt with this for several years on the budget where they were required to cut 10% operational for several years. Again, I'm not saying there aren't places they can save, but I just don't know that there's a lot of
You're
fluff.
suggesting changing the 2%?
Well, there's that possibility. There's, you know, there are positions that were recommended. I don't. I think if I did if you were to go to 1.5 per se, I think that was $35,000, which would be 2 cents.
We had freezes on for a while. We didn't give increases. It helped. It made sense. It's not ideal. But then there's the elephant question in the room. Do you go out for referendum? And I don't think that's...
We can't do that for this year.
Yeah, we're not.
Well, I know,
we have
but
to be
I'm
up
looking
against it.
ahead for the issue we're going to run into the next budget cycle.
And that's on the heels of the school referendum, right? Relatively speaking. I mean,
We're elected to make those hard decisions. I mean,
understood.
referendum, I guess if you want to use it as a tool to direct us on what they want.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really that's not making a hard decision.
No, I know. I'm just
Boy.
saying if you want to use it as a tool to gauge what the general public thinks. And you've already heard taxes are high in Hudson
You know, you look at the referenda that they did out in
Township.
the township, the referendum for the roads and other referenda that people turned down, they don't, and then the roads don't get done. And now you got other issues. And in order to catch up in the roads, you have to go, you have to increase your taxes even more. They borrow money for operations, for Pete's sake. So,
Is there anything more on the revenue side? I mean, from the parking study, I mean, that's being
Parking
implemented.
goes into the parking fund, so that doesn't
Okay.
help the general fund at all.
And that is basically consumed by what's coming up.
Right.
But you can't use that for anything else.
You have to
Well,
publish by when?
People have.
I have to have something to the newspaper by next Wednesday or Thursday.
And what does that mean? Does it have to be definitive by then?
No,
It has to be your proposed budget. You certainly can make changes in November, but at the budget hearing, but this is the budget hearing notice.
Well, I just want to, so it's not.
I guess what I'm saying is if you're going to make cuts, you're going to have to make personnel cuts. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't things within the departments that can't be.
Are you saying laying off people?
No. I'm just saying that I still think you need to determine what you want that mill rate to be.
No, you know what, and we could do that, and I'm reluctant to throw a number out there because I don't know. Well, again, what you're ignoring, I think, is that nobody has given a mandate to the departments to go back and cut current expenditures. You know, take a look at what you've got and cut them, not cut what you're asking for increases, but take a serious look at your current budget and where can you cut. All we've heard today, and this is typical, don't get me wrong, I'm not casting aspersions or anything, but all we've heard is, you know, we think that we can do it with just this increase or this increase, and nobody has actually gone back and said, we need to take a serious look at what we're doing right now in our operations in our respective departments and where can we cut money. And I really think that needs to be done. And, I mean, it's quite clear. You either do it today or you're going to be making draconian cuts next year. Very draconian cuts next year. And you can't lay that off on us.
I think we should wait till our finance meeting on Monday to come up with some ideas so the department heads could take this back.
No, I have a commitment with my dad with a medical thing on Monday that I kind of can't get out of, but.
Well, I get that, but I mean, okay, so.
He was saying doing it at Monday night's finance meeting, is that what you're recommending?
Which gives us time, department head times to go get it, cut it, whatever, and then you can get it in the newspaper for a proposal.
That's fine.
I'll have to see if I
Can
can
we
get out
have,
of.
no, I can do it. Can we come up, though, with direction to the department heads of either a number or a mill rate?
Percentage.
I mean, you're already talking, if you're talking making cuts, then if you just eliminate everything that was asked for tonight. I mean, if you're talking cuts, Rich, you're talking cuts from where we are right now.
But and that could be, and that might make the department heads, the different departments, look at how they're going to make it work for next year. But this is just typical where we never really take a serious look at what we're doing today and whether we can save money today.
Well, I always disagree with you because I go through this pretty, taking a look to say these all this stuff small.
You're not running a department.
Pardon?
You're not running a department.
No.
I was talking about the people that are running the departments.
But we should be able to help them.
I would hope so, but we're not involved in the day-to-day.
Right, no, I get that, nor do we want to be.
No, absolutely.
Yes, I said that out loud.
But, I mean, the message here, it's not saying that departments are being run poorly or anything like that. That's not the message. I don't want anybody thinking that. The message is we got a serious issue. And we either deal with it today or we're going to have to make some decisions a year from now that we don't want to make. So, all right.
Do you want me to go back and do something different with the personnel increase?
I think we should freeze it.
I think that's sending the wrong message to your employees, but, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, we went through everything last year to do an adjustment, a wage adjustment to bring our employees in line with.
Well, something's got to give.
Well, I'm not saying you couldn't reduce it. I just don't know that. But that's your call. I mean, that would.
And I would.
You know, here's the deal. We're not going to come up with a solution right now.
No, we've got to send it back with the department.
And I'm not suggesting that we even try. I think everybody knows what we're looking at. And I think that we can have discussions, Brenda, Devin, the department heads, and just try to figure out, where there
But
might
we're
be
going to
some-
have to cut personnel costs, is what I'm saying. You're going to have to do that, because you're not going to find I assume you're going to want to reduce that amount by at least 10 cents a thousand. I mean, so if we're going to have to reduce personnel costs, because even if you don't give anybody any increases that they ask for this year, that's going to bring you 3-4 cents. And that's not going to resolve what's going to happen in the years to come. I may be wrong, but there isn't in my mind, a lot of fluff in the operations budget. And when 70 to 75% of your budget is personnel, that's...
All right, if we want to get the mill rate down to, for example, 5.25, that would be about a 4% decrease in the budget from what we've got here right now. Can we challenge the department heads to?
Is that your bogey, 5.25? Is that what you think?
So you're talking a reduction in the mill rate.
I'm not.
527 now, right?
I'm not.
Just asking.
I don't know. I don't know what we're going to end up with at the end, but I just put that in as a number so I could get a percentage that to target.
And again, I don't know how you'll do that operationally, excluding personnel.
Well, you don't increase it 170,000 or 177. What is it? 500,000? You decrease it by 177,
To keep us at the 5.27 though, right?
more or less. If my rough math, which is from just what they were presented today,
If you want to keep the mill rate where it is,
There's a 2%
hold on a
increase.
second here.
It's about,
It's 177,000.
5.39. Yes, CPI.
5.39.
and that's including keeping the goats, just mind you.
Come on. If you cut 285,000 out of the budget, that puts you at 5.29.
Spots. What is it? I want to see.
280.
And 285,000, and from what I calculated before, even giving 0%, well, I would have to do the calculation of what 1% is. I can't do that right off the top of my head, but if you were to do 1% across instead of 2%, I think that savings would be $80,000 or something like that.
So adding that on to the 177?
What's the 177?
Ballpark is, if you don't add Jeff's training, which was 25K, 50K for the CSO, you got 40K for a vehicle, and you got 42 for the public works.
The 50,000 includes 40,000.
Okay.
All right, so let me propose this. I'm sorry, you guys, I don't want to interrupt what you're doing.
You could,
I'm just looking for a number.
so, if you were to reduce the general contingency by $20,000 and eliminate the car, that's $60,000, the CSO vehicle, and then you're saying that,
The 25K and his training,
right? And we could do something with the spreading the
well, that would,
the plates,
yeah.
so that could be 25,000 less.
What's the first phase of that? How much was the first phase?
That was a $40,000. They broke it up into 24,000, 10,000, and then 6,000.
What does that reduce it? Or
Hold on.
you said 280 if we were at 529 minus what you just added up, and then maybe pull $100,000 from the health fund.
So we're putting I'm reducing the contingency to 40, the CSO vehicle potentially from funds. So are you talking the whole CSO program? So that's another 10,000. Training is 25,000. Reduce of 25,000. So we're talking another 60.
I would like to hear from the department heads before we.
I'm just trying to
I
get
know,
a general
you're trying to
number.
get, yeah, okay.
If you were to do that and then pull 100 from the health insurance fund, you'd be at 534. So you'd be a 7-cent increase.
It would be at 5.
I don't know what that would do to your, is there a way to figure that out without doing the,
What was the question?
if the mill rate's at 534, how much of our, whatchamacallit does that take, the levy capacity?
Yeah, I don't have that with me, but we just reduced the mill rate by, I can figure it out.
Well, we can go to 558, right?
That'd be 12 cents a thousand is what it's going down.
You know, that's just Band-Aid stuff. I mean, really, that's not addressing the issue at all. You're putting off some of those costs into the future. We did that, frankly, last year. You know, put the goats off, we put the officer off, and here they are. So no, we need to get this back at the departments. They need to be taking a look at what they're doing.
Well, we would wait for a number.
It looks like it would add about 200,000 back to that unused.
So if we were to go, the cost of living adjustment is, CPI is right around 2%, 1.9 something, call it 2.
It's a little higher.
Well, it was
than
2
that.
point, depending on which one January was 1.9, 2.3 was July to July. But I think if I did the calculation right, if you went to 1.5, that was about a $40,000 change. If you went to 1%, that was, so every 0.5% is about $40,000.
So a 2% would take us to about 5.38.
No, 2% is what's in there.
I think the mayor's.
Total budget.
The
Oh.
mill rate.
So right now it's at 5.34 with the changes that we discussed.
And I'm not even looking at them. I'm going a different route completely. I don't want Band-Aid stuff. I would say we need to reduce that from 5.47. We're at 5.27, 2%. You know, I'd like to meet in the middle. I'd like to be at 5.37, 5.38. And that would be where I'm at. And let everybody else figure out how they're going to get there.
No, I was close. 534. And do I like cutting out what Jeff's asking for? No.
No, neither do I. I don't like cutting out anything that anybody's asking
No,
for.
right.
But, because frankly, I don't see a bunch of spendthrifts here.
No, I agree.
But we're all in this together. We all have to face this same reality.
Do you want me to change the personnel cost to a different number other than 2%? That's my question.
No, I don't. Do you? If we're saying 2% for the departments to get us to 5.38, I'm talking about overall budget, not just personnel. If we're saying 2% increase across the board, which right now I think is a good bogey, that would be my preference at this point.
If it can work within that.
We're going to have to do something then with the reallocation of the utility, because you're talking $140,000 right there. The clerk treasurer, if we're going to reassign the cost for personnel costs from utilities to the general fund, we're talking the clerk treasurer, that's $50,000. And if you're talking a 2% increase, we're talking $7,200. So, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if we're going to reallocate those utility costs, that right there is $140,000. Now, granted, we're getting the revenue in on the other side. But, so that is a big chunk of your I mean, yes, there's the 2%, I get that, but that's a big chunk of you're looking at $45, $90, $140,000 increase in your general fund budget because we're shifting costs from utility funds. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's...
Isn't that more palatable, more reasonable moving forward that way?
The what? I'm sorry, Randy.
Wouldn't that be reasonable, more moving forward that way instead of just, as I said and you said, Band-Aiding it?
But what I'm saying is if you're directing Jenny and Brenda to only go up 2% in their budget, when you're adding 55,000 to start, that's not, you can't do that. I mean,
They have to cut somewhere else.
they'd have to cut 60,000 out of their operations budget, and that's their entire operations budget. So they'd have zero operations.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, I don't know whether we can, again, that's theoretically it's a Band-Aid. You know, moving it off a year, but I don't know. I think if you're going to be able to reduce, the levy, I'm going to have to change that across the board increase.
I don't know that you're going to have to do that. Okay, I want the departments to go back and look at their budgets from this year. I want to see the savings that we can get from the departments this year. You publish what you feel you need to publish for the paper.
I can't publish anything.
Well,
I can't publish a budget that says we're going to increase the mill rate by 20 cents and then you guys, I guess I would like to see something closer to the actual budget for publication. Because otherwise you're not really publishing a budget. You're just throwing.
Well,
this is
you're
our
the one that gave
proposed
us the
budget right
deadline.
now.
Pardon me?
This is our proposed budget right now.
Yeah. It's not finalized. Even if it's published, it's not finalized, right?
No.
Publish what you need to publish.
Mayor, could you give us more direction with, I heard you say savings from this year. Do you mean 18 or 19?
18.
18?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just take a look at the budgets from your current budget, what's going on operationally. Go back.
Just to be able to carry over? Or what are you trying to accomplish?
But the carryover is a Band-Aid as well. I mean, it's no different than taking money out of the health insurance reserve.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about just looking at your current operations and seeing where you could save money this year, next year, the year after, cut it out of the budget. Very similar to what the library did. They cut stuff out of the budget. They took their budget and reduced it significantly. And they were getting increases year after year after they did that, but that's what we need to do. Every conversation that we have is, every year, how much do you need, or here's what we're requesting in more money, and our conversation is all about, can you reduce your request a little bit? It's not about, can you actually reduce your budget? So you're shaking your head. You know, I get it, Chief, but you know what? Next year, we're talking personnel.
Well, that's what it would be this year. I mean, the part-time program would be gone. That 20 grand is the only thing I can cut. That would be gone. If I had to cut anything from my budget, that's where it would come from.
What did you say? Say that again?
The part-time program, that 20,000 in the part-time program would be gone.
Well, there's a start.
But so we give it to you this year and take it away next year.
I hear what you're saying.
I mean, that's what it's going to be. That's what's
There's no fat in the operational budget.
but that's what's going to happen. You know, we give it to you this year and we take it away next year, and that's not fair either.
Would you like department heads to look at training budgets and look at mandatory training that are needed for their job requirements versus nice-to-have training?
Yeah, I want to, yes. I mean, the answer is yes.
So operationally, we're looking this year, the increase that out of that, whatever that number was, 500, it's about 160,000 is operational. And that includes the stuff you've talked about today. Based on last year's.
All right, so we need to give some direction to the department heads, but is there anything else that we need to accomplish yet today that we can do right now?
I don't know. I think all of this needs a lot of thought. It's too bad there aren't more of the council could be here. But I mean, this is something that everybody's going to have to take back and think about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when do you have to have this published, Devin?
It has to go to the newspaper on Thursday.
When do we have to be finalized?
This Thursday or next Thursday?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
When do we have to be finalized?
The final budget isn't until is at the budget hearing,
November 19th.
November 19th.
So they brought a good
However,
point out.
it's not that you can't make changes at the budget hearing, but
This is proposed. You could add that. You could.
you can amend whatever you want at the budget
But
hearing.
you could post this in the
But
paper.
you at the budget hearing can't say to Devin, well, what's 1% as opposed to, I guess what I can do is I can do all the calculations at all those different, I'm just picking that as one example, and tell you what that's going to reduce the budget by. I mean, I could have all those figures available at the budget hearing.
But what I'm saying is, what she said, this is the proposed budget as presented to the finance. This could be posted in the paper.
This could be published, but I guess quickly, are we doing anything different with the contingency? Reducing that, yes or no? This was,
Quick savings of $20,000, is that what?
right, and the other thing would be the CSO vehicle. I mean, those would be things that I can get off there now.
I would agree with the contingency because that's we could always replace that. And then unfortunate, Jeff, CSO might have to wait. Unless you want, well, how much was that, 50?
50 total. So yes, if you're, what I can do is I can publish it with what we have right now. And then at the budget hearing, then you would, ask the department heads to come in and I can, if they get those numbers to me, if they do find savings, and then I can go back and do the big salary spreadsheet I have with 1%, 1.5%, so we know what, so that at the budget hearing, you're not, and if you have ideas of, okay, if we do this, what will that be? It'd be easier if I knew what those ideas were ahead of time, so I can do the calculations, so the night of the budget hearing, I can say, okay, if you do this, this is what the number is, if you do this.
Mm-hmm.
So, does that sound amenable? We'll do it that way. And that'll give the department heads time that'll give them 4 weeks if they're able, not if they're able, sorry, to find potential savings.
Okay.
And then,
So, just so I'm clear, you want us to try and find like a 2% savings or 0% increase, or what do you want us to try and come up with?
I really would like the departments to go through their department expenditures with a fine-tooth comb. I mean, every staple, every paper clip, and see what you can get by without before we start adding in again. All right, that would be the first thing I'd want to do. So I'm not saying, well, come back with no increase. I'm not saying that. But we need to get into a mentality before we start asking for more money is how can we save money that we're currently spending, is there a way to save money before we start asking for additional increases? That's probably really vague, isn't it, Jeff? That's probably, and unintentionally, but I mean, we're always in that mindset until we absolutely have to cut. And then we go into a different mindset, and that's where we're going to be in a year. So I think we need to start looking at cuts right now, and where can we save money in every department right now.
In addition to that, anything that was asked for by any of the departments, let's say over $5,000, or is there that I can also list out for you to see? Mm-hmm. You know, any of the budget, is 5,000 a reasonable number, or is it, you know what I'm saying, an increase besides any cuts they can make? But I guess, is there a number? I'm just trying to get everything set so you guys can see.
The $5,000 won't affect the mill rate. I was going to say green mill.
It's about a fourth of a penny. Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't make.
So anything, if there's any expenditure request over, so I'm just trying to lay everything out for you guys so you can see what every request, you know, is out there. So you have a clear, and can get that to you. And I will get the salary numbers to you so you can say, well, if we go with a 1% increase, then that's what this ends up being.
And I offered Jeff, you know, if you want to bounce things off me, feel free to everybody.
I'm not going to offer the same thing because I'd be worried about what he wants to bounce off of me.
All right, well, that's what the plan will be then. I'll get this published the way it is, and I'll start putting together a list of all the, you know.
Okay, so do you need a motion to publish the proposed budget that we've?
Sure.
All right, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Got a motion second. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
So right now you're at 544, just so you know where you're at with,
Okay.
with making no change. The only change effectively was the attorney,
Well,
which, well,
That
we're
should
going to
go
be over
out.
budget anyway.
That should go out to RFP.
Well, and that's something you can discuss, you know.
Okay.
When do we discuss it?
Well, that
You
would
know,
have to be a separate.
I chuckle because I know that there are a couple of the law offices in town that have, in the past, since I've been here anyway, when I first got here, I'd noticed that they had made requests that they would like to bid on it. And those law offices right now, with everything that we have going on in the city, there's no way they've got conflicts of interest. Yeah, I don't know how many of them there are that don't have a conflict with us right now. So I do chuckle about that a little bit. All right.
Would the finance committee like to meet again before the budget hearing? Or do it at a regular meeting?
Can't we do it on Monday? When's the public
Well,
hearing?
we could do the first meeting in November. I mean, that's still a week ahead of the whatever, and I can present what I have,
What's that date?
the November 12th meeting. You know, by then, the department heads can bring back what they have. If you'd like to do that, we could.
I would like to meet before that 12th meeting.
Well, we've got the meeting Monday night. I think that, see what the
Yeah.
department heads
Sure.
can come up with by then.
Brenda
And
will
then we'll have a
have-
better idea of redirecting them if
Okay.
needed.
Is that, well, I don't know, for the department heads, that's 3 days.
Yeah.
That's effectively 3 days.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
They can start looking at it and at least,
It's not going to be the first time I've looked at it.
So what time do you
Yeah.
want to meet on Monday? You want to meet at 6 instead of 6:30?
Should be earlier, right?
Yeah,
yeah, we better,
I'll have,
gives us an hour. I think it should be enough.
With everything else that we have on that agenda.
I don't know that there's a
Yeah.
lot.
Okay.
Capital projects are, but that'll be at the council meeting.
And I just want to verify something. So the CSO program, 40,000 of that is a vehicle, and we don't capitalize vehicles.
We typically have not capitalized police vehicles because we replace them sooner than the 10 years. And
Got
then the other reason that we don't put police vehicles in the capital equipment is we don't want to put police vehicles sometimes up against plow trucks. And that's the other reason I've seen it. Because
Gotcha.
we need to replace the police vehicles on a rotating basis.
Gotcha. I'm just curious because is a CSO vehicle a little bit different than a police vehicle?
It could be.
In that it could last longer because it's not seeing the action that a
Not
police
be involved in any chases.
And maybe Jeff could tell us the replacement schedule for a CSO vehicle.
10 years.
Nice.
No, realistically, probably that 7 to 8 year range.
I'm sorry.
You know, on the average, if it averages 15,000, 20,000 miles a year, 15,000 miles a year, you get 7 years out of it.
7 years.
Well, and it depends on whether you find something used and how many miles it's got on it to start with.
Correct.
Do you want,
Can they Uber?
Sorry?
Can they Uber?
I know you already made the motion, but since you're meeting on Monday, do you want me to hold off doing the publication? Because
Yeah, probably.
I know you made that motion, but I can get it done.
Yeah, as long
Here
as you
Wednesday
don't,
next week.
if you're comfortable with that, we can,
What I can do is I can get the
You can
budget
revise
hearing
things.
notice, everything formatted, and then, okay.
plug everything in, okay?
And I will have the numbers for the different percentages on the wage increases by then for you as well.
I don't like the idea of skimping on the wage increases when you've got
I
2%
just don't know
inflation.
what else.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, okay.
All right, move to adjourn.
Second?
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thank you all for being here.